Last on Everdark, Caemorn is brought to Ravenscroft Manor, much to Balthazar's anger and dismay. Yet he immediately makes himself useful by teaching Christian how to control David. Will that endear him to anyone, though? Everdark, Episode 68. I am Iros. "We need a house meeting," Balthazar said as he stared into Caemorn's face. It was amazing how he still did, and oddly didn't, hate this man. He hated what he'd done to Julian's parents. He hated what he'd gotten Heath and Celine, and perhaps Timothy into, and the grief he'd caused Elena. He used to hate Caemorn for kicking him out of vampire society, and if he were honest, that had been when the greatest hatred had sprung from. But not anymore. He had his own house. He had made his own way. He had the friendship of the goddamn vampire king. Though he was very annoyed at that king at the moment, and finally, he knew who he really was. But Caemorn, though he deserved to get the shit kicked out of him, and probably far worse, no longer could be blamed for what had happened to him. And in that moment, he trusted his gift in a way he had never fully done before. Not even when Damon had shown him what could be done with it against the Callies. He stepped back from Caemorn even as he swept his mind outwards and used his gift. He caught hold of the werewolves and Caemorn's minds. They were now far more bound than they had been physically before. Arceus and William stepped back from the werewolves, who Balthazar allowed to get to their feet, but no farther. Caemorn's eyes were fixed upon him. That calculating intelligence just radiated from him, yet the Callie vampire couldn't move a millimeter.
"Your powers have always been extraordinary,"
Caemorn said. Balthazar felt Caemorn push against the control he had, but Caemorn could not move a muscle, and if he tried to use his gift, Balthazar would drop him like a rock.
"I thought when he called you Iros that he simply meant your bloodline, but, perhaps not."
Christian was suddenly by his side, wrapping an arm around him. His fledgling silver eyes were huge. He could feel Christian's alarm that his true identity had been outed. He kissed his fledgling's head. He then glared at Damon. "Cat out of the bag much, my king? And don't pretend you don't know that idiom. Calling me Iros and calling Fiona Wyvern, though I notice no one cares or notices about her," Balthazar sent. "It was time, Iros. I thought you understood that," Damon answered with a faint amount of amusement. "I realize, but I need to tell my people first. Telling the people in House Ravenscroft is only a start. Your people are all the Iros," Damon reminded him. "Remember that." Balthazar's heart twisted with desire to have that kind of power and acceptance, but also nervousness. He had failed before at leading them as the immortal Iros. It had gotten him killed. Plus, he would have to be even more responsible if he took up the helm of all the Iros. "You say the sweetest things. I never know whether to be nauseous or excited," Balthazar drawled. "I wish my friend would be at my side and not pretending to be who he is not," Damon replied mildly. "What we do next is a step that is large. You must be yourself when we do this together." As if bringing Caemorn here and his fuzzy pets isn't a large step. "This is nothing compared to what we do next," Damon said with another one of those mild smiles.
"What is Damon saying to you? Caemorn looks like he's watching a tennis match,"
Christian asked. Caemorn was frowning, and his eyes had been ping-ponging between him and Damon. He knew they were communicating telepathically, but obviously he couldn't tell what they were saying. "Damon wants to get into more trouble. Like usual, Christian," Balthazar said.
"And he wants his favorite ally in crime at his side, I take it."
Christian shook his head, not needing confirmation to know it was true.
"He likes to drag you with him into dangerous situations, while leaving Julian and I behind."
"Yes, and I agree with him on the latter part." Balthazar stroked his fledgling's back, which only got him a raised eyebrow in response.
"If Callie still exists, and Damon clearly exists, then why not Iros?"
Lisette murmured, breaking the silence that had fallen.
"Not Iros reborn, but Iros himself."
Fiona went to Arceus's side then. Her gaze flickered around the room. She had heard, obviously, what Damon had called her, but she clearly didn't believe it. Like Caemorn, she likely thought he had been calling her by her bloodline. Yet now both Caemorn and Lisette were talking about immortals, and she looked a little shell-shocked. Without Balthazar confirming anything, she murmured,
"Are any of the immortals actually dead? Or did the Order lie about all that too? Well, religion has always been a lie in and of itself, to comfort, not to lead people toward the truth."
It was Arceus, but not Caemorn who looked guilt-stricken. But Arceus had always been a believer. It hurt to see. Balthazar was keenly aware now that William and Isabel had heard this news, not to mention the Calais vampires, though, ironically, they were the least likely to tell anyone. Knowledge was power, after all, but William, his beloved little William, leaked like a sieve, and with the wide-eyed look William was giving him now, he knew the information would be everywhere.
Do not feel badly, Arceus. You only ever believed the good parts anyways, and there are a lot more good parts that you'll find out,
Sophia assured him.
You're very kind, Sophia,
Arceus said with a weak smile. Balthazar scrubbed his face. Everything has turned upside down for all of us, my friend. Don't sweat this.
I will feel much better after we rescue Seer from the spire.
Arceus growled as he glared at Caemorn.
To think one of the immortals was imprisoned? How blind everyone has been when they know the truth.
How many people do you think really believe in what the Order says?
Caemorn scoffed.
The Order brings, well, order. Religion is familiar to every vampire, everyone and everything, in its place.
With you at the top? Balthazar made a disgusted noise. You never believed in any of it. You and all those, except Arceus, used the Order as a hammer, and all of us were nails. The Council does nothing without your say.
Can't we use that?
Fiona's arms crossed over her chest.
Can't we use him? Make him contact the Council? He'll tell them that he believes that Damon is our king and that he means us no harm, and
What would the Council consider harm, Fiona?
Lisette laughed softly.
Them losing power, of course. They would definitely see Damon as the threat he truly is to them, no matter what Caemorn says. They'll just assume our great preceptor has thrown them under the bus so that he can retain power under Damon's leadership, which I am sure is what's going on here, or that Iros here has scrambled his brains. Either way, they will find some reason not to accept him.
They are of no consequence, Damon said quietly. Balthazar immediately wondered if this was the bit of trouble that Damon wanted to get into, but immediately set that to the side. Going after the Council. Until they had arranged their forces, that would be insane.
what about Calais?
Fiona asked.
Can we not at least alert them to who Artemis Elusius really is? Calais is no one's favourite immortal.
Is that a personal opinion of yours, Wyvern?
Caemorn asked, his eyes narrowed. She started slightly, and Arceus put a hand on her shoulder.
You know my name, Caemorn. Use it.
She snapped.
I believe I am.
Caemorn murmured.
I just do not think that they will be more alarmed by the existence of Calais than of Damon or of Iros.
His silver-eyed gaze slid to him.
I think you're just jealous that you aren't the immortal, Caemorn.
Lisette chuckled.
You just get to be the direct fledgling of one, which will take your credibility with anyone who fears them down to negative numbers. Not that you were ever anyone's favourite either.
So going to the Council is out.
Fiona shook her head as if she couldn't believe that some form of authority couldn't help them.
There were never any true believers on it.
Arceus said.
So what use is Caemorn to us?
Fiona's nostrils flared.
What does he bring to the table? He came here seeking asylum, but with nothing to add to our fight.
Very good questions, but I am certain my fellow Callie has an answer to them.
Lisette said.
Even little Sophia said he would be useful. Yes, Fiona will get us into Solis, while Caemorn will be able to unlock my mistress's cell. He will have other uses beyond this, but these are the most important at this time.
Sophia said.
You have foreseen this, because I have not been promised anything for my participation.
Caemorn said. You are lucky to still have your second life, Balthazar reminded him. Julian, who had remained silently and tucked by Damon's side, said,
You'll do it because you have no other choice.
Camon's expression did not change, but Balthazar sensed the truth of those words in the preceptor's thoughts. Julian continued,
That's why you came to King Damon. Because even though you knew you'd likely earned a second death from him, you absolutely knew that Callie was going to eliminate you.
Camon still appeared unruffled even as his mind was whirling.
That may be so, but I need some assurances that if I fully cooperate, that I will—
You will serve, Damon said softly and ran his finger down Julian's cheek. Camon blinked and almost looked affronted.
I need assurances.
I am your king. Damon said that infuriating line that seemed to throw all of them into a state where they had no idea what to say. It was so implacable.
Yes, of course, you are. And I did not mean to suggest that I was—
There will be no assurances, Camon. There will be nothing but service from you. And at the end, we will see, Damon said without looking at him. This is your test and trial. You've survived so many. Perhaps you will survive this one. Camon's skin tone went paler than normal. Balthazar expected him to argue more, to press his case, but he surprisingly just inclined his head. Balthazar had allowed him to do that much. I know you probably want to get to your mistress right now, Sophia, Balthazar said, but I need to get things settled here before we have another immortal in the house. We will take Solace back, Damon said suddenly. He was stroking Julian's hair, completely unperturbed about everything. Where what now? Balthazar blinked at the vampire king. He must have misunderstood. We will take Solace, Damon repeated. When you say take, what do you mean by that exactly? Balthazar asked. It will be under my protection and care, Damon answered simply. Fiona let out a small sound.
I believe, forgive me, King Damon, but Solace is filled with confessors, most highly trained, and those that are not, well, they are high in number, and there are blood slaves. Not that I do not know what you think about—
Do I approve of blood slaves? Each of you started as a human being. I value you. Every human has the potential to be one of you, Damon explained. So, no, Wyvern. I do not approve of blood slaves. None will be harmed.
If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or other dedicated listening platforms, and you want to say hi, head on over to the YouTube channel. We love to hear directly from you. Otherwise, we have no idea who's out there listening. It really means a lot. If you don't want to comment on specific episodes, we also run polls and discussions in our YouTube community tab all the time with deep topics such as, do you have pets? And what's your favorite vampire movie? Just search for Everdark YouTube or follow the link in the notes to connect with us.
But everyone was exchanging looks in the room. They did not believe he was strong enough to stop the confessors from harming them, even if his people would not.
You are very certain,
Lisette said, her eyebrows rising. You think that I am arrogant and being quite overconfident in my powers. Damon actually laughed as he said this. I forget that none of you truly knows me yet. Even those that are my friends of old cannot remember. I assure you that I am not being overconfident. I am served more than just by my powers and my friends. Damon turned towards Camon. The Everdark knows I have returned, does it not? Camon blanched, as if those words had meaning to them, but he said,
You are just one vampire, and no matter the power of your friends here, you do not have enough strength to take all of Solace.
A faint smile crossed Damon's lips. Balthazar fully expected him to say something about being king again, but he petted Julian instead.
Will you use Armageddon? Does such a power exist?
Camon pressed. Damon said nothing to him. Instead, he spoke to Balthazar. I suppose you will want me to put on pants for this house meeting you wish to have. If you wouldn't mind, Balthazar answered dryly.
You're definitely putting on pants,
Julian scolded but gently. Balthazar hadn't noticed he had a pair of leather pants and boots under one arm. Camorn did sort of take up all of my attention. Balthazar gestured for William and Isabel to come to him. Both eagerly did. He was glad to see that neither of them seemed to regard him any differently. Their minds were whirring, but they still believed him their protector. Him being Eiros just meant that he might be able to do a better job of that. He hoped that would be the case with the rest of his house. William, Isabel, I need you to make sure that Christian's parents are taken care of and not allowed near the main hall, he explained. After you do that, come yourselves. I will summon everyone. Both nodded.
You're nervous.
Isabel noted with a nervous laugh. I've never been a very religious person, so I only had a passing understanding of the uneasiness people had with immortals. Balthazar licked his lips. Now I'm not sure how people will react.
You know you could make us react however you like.
William reminded him softly, and he could. He really could. He could tune every single one of their brains so that they would think it the best thing ever, and that would likely be a wise move. He needed cohesiveness. They were going to retake Solace after all. He couldn't have anyone with less than 100% approval of him in the group. It would be foolish, but he found himself saying, I know, but I won't do that. Otherwise, I would be Roan. William smiled back broadly at him.
You just proved that you aren't and never could be. You'll be all right, Balthazar. We left Vampire Society for you. We're behind you in this too.
He gave them a brief nod, and both of them took off. Christian touched his hand. Those intelligent silver eyes looked up into his.
They know who you are, Balthazar. It doesn't matter what your name is,
Christian said. Balthazar cupped his face and gently kissed his forehead. Thank you.
You don't believe me,
Christian said, drawing back with a frown. Time will tell, Balthazar said. I guess I don't think that I would take it well, so I really don't know how I can expect anyone else to. But let's get this over with. Balthazar sent out a wave of command throughout the house. Everyone, excluding Elena, would be present when he made his announcement. He turned towards Damon, who was now thankfully dressed. Damon's naked body was distracting to most everyone. His red eyes were fixed on Balthazar's face. He was smiling again in that faint, irritating way. You look pleased with yourself, now that you've completely upset the apple cart, Balthazar told him. It's the beginning, all of it. When Cyr told me that I would have to win back all, I never truly appreciated how exciting it would be. Damon confessed.
Exciting.
Julian's eyebrows rose up as he shook his head. Damon kissed Julian's nearest temple. You find excitement in discovery. I find it in conquest. But you will see what it is like to see an empire fall and be retaken. Casting his voice low, though really with a bunch of vampires it was pointless. Are we really just going to waltz into Solace and retake the place? Should I be telling my people to prepare for war? Damon's forehead furrowed. Why would we need their assistance, Eiros? While Balthazar was staring at him, Fiona and Arceus joined them. She looked as disbelieving as Balthazar imagined that he did. Arceus still appeared disturbed by what he had learned about Cyr. Past them, Camorn was still fixed in place by the wall. Sophia was talking to him and petting the werewolves on the head as if they were the kitties that she was demanding be brought to the house. Lizette and her group still sat on the couches like little birds on a line, but Balthazar was certain that they listened to every word. I'm going to ignore that you just suggested a suicide mission, Balthazar said to Damon. Well, I do assume that beyond Sophia, Wyvern, and Camorn, that a few of the vampires would like to accompany us, Damon said. Arceus?
Yes, I am coming. Perhaps I can reach some of the confessors and we can avoid some bloodshed,
Arceus said, coming back from whatever dark place his mind had taken him. There will only be as much blood shed as there must be, and no more. Far less than either of you envision, Damon assured them. But how could his assurances ring anything but hollow?
I would like to go to Solace as well.
Lizette's voice rose up.
Why? You don't care about those in Solace.
Fiona said flatly.
I wish to see our king in action. My witnessing will have value.
She answered simply.
Still wondering if you're on the right side?
Sophia shook her head. She had come over from speaking to Camorn.
Not in the least. I am truly on your side. I am just still Well, I need to see some things with my own eyes.
Lisette smiled thinly. There will be much to see and report upon, Damon said with gentle equanimity. You are not peeved by her disbelief? Balthazar asked. Damon clasped his shoulder. It will be all the better when she does believe. I am certain she will be a convert, Balthazar responded dryly. It is time for you to tell people who you are now, Iros, Damon said. Balthazar had already heard the soft footfalls coming from every direction in the manor. His stomach did a flip. Christian held tightly onto his right hand. He felt his fledgling telling him that there was nothing to fear. Balthazar linked his hands with Christian's. He said to Caemon and the werewolves, Remain here. You will be allowed to move about this room, but no further.
We will remain here with him, Balthazar, or Iros,
Lisette said with a tilt of her head.
And you needn't worry that any feelings I might have for a fellow Callie will affect me in the least. You are my friend. Caemon is, well, you need not worry.
Balthazar knew she was telling the truth. She was going to question him, but she wasn't going to do anything that would harm him or his. He would learn everything she got out of Caemon in any event. Taking a deep breath, he merely inclined his head and turned towards the door out into the hallway. He gestured for Damon to precede him at the last moment. Not that Damon stood on ceremony, but perhaps he ought to in front of the others. Damon smiled at him and headed out into the hallway first with Julian in tow. Arceus actually smiled broadly at him, the first genuine smile in some time.
You have come around, haven't you?
If we are going to our second deaths for our king, might as well let him go first out of the door, Balthazar said.
And it allows you to avoid telling everyone you're Iros for a few minutes,
Fiona muttered. Oh, and you'll be telling them that you're Wyvern, Fiona. Balthazar smiled acidly at her. She blinked. Clutching onto Christian's hand, he strode out of the room into the main hall. He heard in his ears as well as his head the excited murmurings from his house. They had no idea what he was going to say or do. Since Damon had joined them, the possibilities were endless. Christian rubbed his thumb along the back of Balthazar's hand comfortingly. I should be telling you that everything is going to be okay, Balthazar said to Christian. Christian merely shook his head.
We're here for each other. Two-way street.
He held up the diamond that contained David's soul.
We need each other, and others too, even those we wish we didn't. But I do believe that things will work out for the best.
At that moment, they entered the hall. It was filled to nearly overflowing. The fireplace was roaring, and Balthazar made his way there. He reluctantly let go of Christian's hand and stepped up onto the thick stone base that jutted out from where the fire burned. The wood popped and crackled behind him remarkably loudly. All eyes were on him. They were like silver dollars glowing in the light. He clasped his hands together. He got welcoming looks and smiles. His house had no idea what he was going to say. Everyone, thank you for joining me here tonight. He gripped his hands so tightly together that his knuckles were white. As you know, we've had a lot of things happen recently. There was a scattering of laughter. He continued, I know that some of you, perhaps many of you, have been believers in the Order. This was not something I shared with you. I did not want to believe. Balthazar paused and cleared his throat that was suddenly tight with emotion. After what Rome did to us, I didn't want to believe in either immortal monsters or gods. He smiled wanly at Damon, who nodded and gave him courage to go on. The room was shocked that he would mention Roan, but it felt right that he should do so. Roan was like a boil they needed to lance, and he was finally going to do it. That is why I am terrified to tell you something I've learned about myself, Balthazar said, and grinned, but all he got back were worried looks. Damon is not the only immortal in our world. Eyes widened and breaths were held. I could tell you that what we know about the immortals other than Damon here is wrong, and that they were brilliant people who didn't deserve what happened to them. But I can't. Balthazar's voice dropped off. He cleared his throat again. I don't actually know what happened back then. The Order doesn't either, but I have learned some things that are true. The first is that King Damon not only exists, but is worthy of being king." Damon inclined his head, and there was a scattering of applause and cries of encouragement. "But you are already learning that on your own," Balthazar said. "That's not why I called this meeting. Words seemed to escape him. He couldn't say the words he needed to. Everyone was looking at him expectantly. William and Isabel had made their way up into the front of the room. Both of them looked at him with shining faces. Feeling a bit like Robert Downey Jr. at that moment, Balthazar abandoned any script he had. He stopped trying to speak and sent a single thought instead, not just to his house, but to all of their bloodline. "I am Iros. I have returned. Come, join me." Join us next time for episode 69, Iros Reborn.
Buying something from our shop is a great way to support the Everdark podcast, as well as our future podcasts once Everdark is finished. Our designer has created some great Everdark merch, such as the Vampire Bloodlines hoodies, mugs, and journals done in a college-type design. Check out the link in the notes to our shop. This way you can support Everdark and wear your vampire bloodline with pride.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Last on Everdark, Balthazar has his Robert Downey Jr. I am Iron Man moment, but instead telling not just his house, but every Iros vampire out there that he is the immortal Iros, and he wants them to return to him. Everdark, Episode 69, Iros Reborn. The room erupted after Balthazar's "I am Iron Man" statement, not only with the exclamations in the room over Balthazar's true nature, but the cell phones that started ringing and buzzing off the hook. Julian watched as vampires' faces were illuminated by the screens of their smartphones as they answered texts and voice calls from other Iros bloodline vampires. Julian had felt the call go out farther than this room, but as he saw the multiple calls and texts flooding the phones of those in House Ravenscroft, he realized how very many other vampires had been contacted. "Yes, you actually heard that. Balthazar is Iros," one said. "No, he is not insane," a few more said. "Oh, by the way, King Damon is real and staying in our house. He often doesn't wear pants. Yeah, things have been busy with us." "No, I'm not crazy either," another said. "You're coming?" everyone asked. "You're not coming? Don't be a fool. You have to come," others followed up with. "You're having a breakdown?" a dozen or more asked. Yes, we all understand," everyone told them. "It's a shock, but it's true. Come." Julian glanced up at the lord of the house. Balthazar stood there in front of the fire, his lower lip caught by his teeth as he looked at the chaos that had erupted in his own house, not to mention his own bloodline, by his own hand. He appeared a bit like a little kid who had revealed that Santa Claus did actually exist to a group that had long thought they knew better. It was part mischievousness and part fear. Damon stepped closer to Balthazar, and though Julian couldn't hear what they were saying to one another, they were clearly talking about how things were being received from the expressions on both their faces. Balthazar let out a laugh that sounded slightly hysterical. Damon patted his back.
They really are best friends.
They should have been the most unlikely of comrades, but somehow Balthazar and Damon worked perfectly together. Balthazar would never worship Damon. He would always speak his mind, and Damon could get the truth from someone he could trust.
Speaking of best friends,
Julian shifted over to Christian, who stood below Balthazar, looking rather overwhelmed, and clearly wondering if this was what happened when Pandora's box was opened. Julian touched the back of Christian's left hand to get his attention.
Are you okay?
Julian asked. Christian turned towards him with his eyebrows lifted.
You're asking me if I'm okay? But what about you? To have Kamorn here? Yeah.
Julian scrubbed the back of his neck as he remembered finding Kamorn on the beach and then realizing that he was the one who had killed his parents. The motivating factor of his life had been right before him. How many times had he imagined finding the person or persons responsible? Well, he'd believed them vampires, so his initial thought was to expose them to the world. And then the idea had been that they'd be punished, perhaps imprisoned. More likely, though he hadn't allowed himself to truly think this, be vivisected. He hadn't really realized what he would do if he found the exact person responsible, though. He had just wanted his parents' deaths to be acknowledged for what it was. Murder. That they had been right about vampires being real. That he had been right. That their deaths hadn't been mere accidents.
Julian.
Christian clasped both of Julian's hands in his. Julian lifted his head. There were tears burning behind his eyes.
I can't kill him. I can't. I should be strong enough to do that, but... Strength? That wouldn't be strength.
Christian cried. When other vampires started looking at them with interest, he lowered his voice.
He'll get what's coming to him, Julian. Damon won't allow him to simply walk away from this. You heard what he said about there being no deals. And I know that he's got to be king, too. If keeping Kamorn around, as preceptor even, is good politically, he might have to do it.
Julian pointed out. And how did he feel about that? He didn't know. Christian studied his face carefully.
Damon chooses you above everything else. It's why he didn't kill Elena, even though he thought he should.
Julian swallowed.
I don't know what to hope for. That Kamorn's killed or allowed to live. It's crazy. I never really thought about what would happen when I got to this point. I mean, he's right there, locked in a room, and I have no idea what I want. You don't have to decide right this moment.
Christian rubbed his shoulders.
That's something that being a vampire and having forever is teaching me. We have nothing but time. True.
Julian gave him a tight smile. Those words did help, though. He didn't have to decide now, or tomorrow, or the day after that. He shook himself. He didn't have to decide anything about Kamorn at this moment. But Christian needed to deal with Balthazar announcing himself now. He saw that William was rapidly texting a whole group.
What's the word about Balthazar?
Julian asked. William looked up, still texting frantically, and said,
Half the people think it's a joke, half the people think that Balthazar's lost his mind, and half the people think it's not a joke, he's not crazy, he's just ridiculously arrogant.
That's 3 halves.
Christian pointed out.
Well, yes, but there is overlap.
William explained.
And what do you think about it, William?
Christian asked.
Most of us aren't surprised.
It was Isabel who answered. She was William's near constant companion.
Truly, once King Damon was found to be real, we all started wondering about the others.
William explained.
There are no Iros vampires that are stronger than Balthazar, and considering he's only 200 years old, that shouldn't be possible. In fact, that's why some think he was exiled.
Julian tried to sense the thoughts of everyone in the room about Balthazar, but when he did, he got blasted by a cacophony of noise. Damon simply reached over and dimmed it for him. Julian's shoulders eased, and he rubbed the back of his neck again as he shot the Vampire King a thankful look. Damon's mind caressed his even as he remained by the fireplace with Balthazar and Arceus. William gave Julian a rather impish smile, sensing what he had tried to do.
We're all too excited right now, Julian. You shouldn't try to read this many minds yet under these circumstances.
Julian nodded.
Yeah, I just figured that out. I was hoping I could get a sense from the room what's going on in people's heads. I'm still confused why Balthazar would be exiled for being too strong.
Christian's eyebrows drew together.
It makes no sense. Surely someone would have wanted to mentor or at least have him in their house as an ally.
William gave him a rather sad smile.
His strength is the reason no one wanted him in their house. He'd already killed one vampire lord, so he'd sort of broken the seal against killing another one. And since vampires normally follow one another because of strength...
They assumed he would take over their house?
Julian guessed. Christian, though, still looked affronted.
He only killed Roan because of the abuse. He wouldn't have been out there gunning for another vampire.
William let out a small laugh.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. Balthazar, or suppose we should call him Iros now, can be quite ruthless to protect those he cares about. And if he thought that his people would be best suited by him being the lord of the house, he'd do it.
I wouldn't have had to kill them, though. Balthazar said as he bounced over to them, overhearing what they were talking about. I'd just convinced them to hand over the keys of power to me without any bloodshed at all. He put an arm around Christian's shoulders and kissed his temple. Killing is so gauche. If only I had known who I was when that stupid trial took place, I could have convinced everyone to name me king instead of exiling me.
But when Damon returned, he'd have had to oust you.
Christian pointed out dryly. Oh no, I'd bow to him. Balthazar shrugged. Would you be willing to give up the crown so easily? Damon asked, as he too sauntered over and put an arm around Julian's shoulders. Julian curled against him, relishing that strength and warmth. After a taste of seeing what you can do? Yes, most definitely yes. I am many things, but suicidal is not one of them. Besides, if I remembered who I was, I would have remembered you as my best friend, so I would have happily turned aside at ruling anything but the Iros bloodline. Balthazar sounded almost peppy.
You look strangely happy, Balthazar. You were terrified about telling the house, but you told everyone, didn't you?
Christian questioned. I told the whole Iros bloodline. Balthazar tipped his head to the side, looking thoughtful. You know, it was like standing on the edge of a cliff and just stepping off and finding one could fly. You are definitely soaring, Iros, Damon remarked with a smile. Balthazar narrowed his eyes at Damon. I really should say it was like standing on the edge of a cliff until you pushed me off. Yes, that is probably more accurate. I wonder when her time will come. Damon tilted his head towards Fiona, who was standing in Arceus's shadow by the fireplace, staring with unease at all the excited, breathless, and shocked Iros vampires, celebrating that their lord was the strongest, and thereby the best of the best Iros. Probably never. She had no contact with her old house after she joined the Order. She actively avoided other women during her time as a confessor, so no one would ever follow her, even if they knew.
And your opinion is not based on your active dislike for her?
Christian tilted his head. Balthazar grinned. Maybe a little, but it is an accurate statement.
Are you pleased with the reaction so far to who you really are?
Julian asked. The room did seem jubilant. The vampires were all talking at once. Their silver eyes were shining. They were texting and conversing on phones and to one another at the same time. Balthazar's gaze swept across the room, and there was a smile on his face. I think so. He frowned slightly. Some people are not surprised.
Iros Reborn really being Iros Reborn is not a surprise,
Isabel pointed out. Yes, well, I suppose, Balthazar said, but still seemed annoyed. I was surprised.
You had no idea who you were before?
William asked. Balthazar shook his head. I wasn't even sure that the Immortals had ever actually existed, let alone that I was one of them.
I thought perhaps that was a front.
Isabel was frowning. Balthazar blinked. Really?
Not at the time,
She assured him.
but later. I mean, now when it comes out that you're really one of the Immortals, I was thinking how clever that was to pretend you didn't believe in them at all. An excellent cover story.
Oh. Balthazar paused, clearly wanting to be seen as clever too, but he shook his head slowly. Alas, I had no clue. I believed I was special because, well, I don't know why, other than being me. But that I was actually a reincarnated immortal, even though people teased that I was, never truly entered my thinking.
What does it mean about the Order?
Isabel asked suddenly, her expression taut.
We were taught that the Immortals were our oppressors. King Damon was always our protector. That clearly isn't true. I mean, the first part. So, is the Order completely a lie?
One of the best things about running my own cereal site and shop is that I get to publish anything I want. And I've done some manga collaborations with my artists that are too sexy for Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Apple. But that's fine, because I can just sell them on my own shop. The Dark Earth Dream is a short side story between Elven Prince Asher Vane and disguised Elven Mage Aiden, featuring the beautiful yaoi artwork of T-Wolf, who also did The Werewolf Next Door. The Werewolf Next Door is a completely standalone yaoi werewolf manga. It's 177 pages, and 100 of those are sexy times. The art manages to be cute and hot at the same time. I don't know how T-Wolf did it. All of these manga are 18-plus works of artistic erotica. They are available in the Wraith Range shop, and the link is in the notes.
There were a few glances between Balthazar and Damon. Balthazar drew in a breath, about to answer her, but then Arceus joined them, and he eagerly turned to the confessor, slapping him on the back. Arceus, brilliant timing. Isabel has some religious questions that are completely in your bailiwick. Balthazar grinned at Arceus. The grin was a little stiff, though. Arceus nodded sagely, not surprised that a religious person like Isabel was having issues with this revelation, and that Balthazar was bucking answering them. Arceus put his hands on Isabel's shoulders.
I too am reeling from the revelations, Isabel.
Arceus told her. His deep voice was soothing, even to Julian, who had no connection to the faith.
I do not have answers other than these. We need to trust what we know about Balthazar and Damon from our own experiences. They are our leaders. They are the ones we can trust. As to our past, we need to wait to find out the truth. The Order is not a history for us, evidently.
As Arceus continued to talk and assure not just Isabel and William about the Order's future, but others who clustered around him, Julian felt a deep well of sadness for them, especially Arceus, who was a good man and seemed to have truly believed in the best parts of the Order. Damon's arm around him tightened. You are right. He is a good man, and he will find a much better faith than the Order ever was or could be, Damon said, reading his thoughts.
A new religion? With you as, well...
God? No, I think not. I am king, but the immortals are their creators, and I am the greatest among them. If they wish to worship me, I would have them do so knowing me truly, and not this fairy tale the Order created, Damon mused.
Yeah, I guess. It's just weird that Arceus is going to create a whole new faith with you and Balthazar, and the other immortals at the center of it.
Julian shook his head in amazement. And you, too. The reason I went to sleep, and the reason I woke up is you, Julian. Damon was gazing down upon him with burning, reverent eyes.
Oh, no, I'm not important like that. I mean, seriously?
Julian couldn't quite contemplate that. Yes, Julian. The story of your life, your parents' lives, and how we met will be crucial to the new faith, Damon told him gently. Your parents will be remembered as the people who discovered my city when no one else could, and they will be remembered as the parents of the king's fledgling. Julian swallowed. He ducked his head.
So they won't be forgotten by the vampires?
No, Julian. They will be venerated, Damon said, and pressed his lips to Julian's head, kissing him long and hard.
I think they'd like that. To be remembered for doing something good and amazing.
Julian responded.
So you told everyone in the Iros bloodline to join us?
Christian was suddenly saying to Balthazar, breaking Julian out of his private conversation with Damon.
When are they arriving? And where are you going to put all of them? Especially if we're going to Solace to rescue Seer.
We? What's this we business? Balthazar carded his fingers through Christian's curls, which had his best friend catching his master's hand.
We, meaning Julian and myself, included in whatever you have planned, of course,
Christian answered simply. No, Balthazar said, making each word part of a command. You are staying here.
We are coming,
Christian responded with just as much emphasis.
We are,
Julian agreed. No, my one, Damon said.
Yes,
Julian contradicted. No, both masters said. Julian and Christian looked at each other. They were going, no matter what.
I want you to consider something,
Julian began.
If you leave us here, you're putting us in greater danger than if you let us come.
Balthazar let out a coughing laugh. Oh, really?
Yes, really. I believe I know where Julian is going with this,
Christian said, crossing his arms over his chest.
Callie.
What about Callie? Balthazar asked.
The moment you guys leave for Solace is the moment that Callie comes here and attacks. He knows what you both care about, your house members and your fledglings.
Julian explained.
Attacking us while you're away is his best shot at taking us hostage. It would make perfect sense to attack when you both are away.
Christian agreed with a nod.
That's what I would do. He could use us as tools to negotiate. Or if he's truly hateful, simply to give us our second deaths in order to hurt you both.
Damon's red eyes burned like magma. Only if he's suicidal. Balthazar gave a cold smile.
Callie will just leave Artemis's body, and we won't know who he or she is.
Julian explained.
They'll just be able to strike from the shadows later.
Arcesius was stroking his beard as he murmured.
That would seem like a Callie thing to do.
Damon's eyes were almost demonic.
You want to keep me safe,
Julian said to him.
The safest place I can be is with you.
That is not the only consideration. You are. Damon rolled his lips.
What? What am I?
Julian stood up straighter, believing he was going to be insulted in some way. Not intentionally, but still. Don't do it, Damon. Don't do it. Just back away slowly from that statement, Balthazar advised him. But Damon did not heed that advice, and maybe he couldn't have. He definitely couldn't have, because Julian wouldn't have allowed it. You do not like death, Damon told him. And there will be death. Julian swallowed but shrugged.
I'm not sure that what I imagine won't be worse than what actually happens. So, I'm going.
Red alert! Red alert! Balthazar murmured. Abort! 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 Damon, though, continued to ignore him. I do not wish you to see me do what must be done. Julian blinked. That seemed to throw Balthazar too. He stared at Damon.
You believe I'll think less of you? I couldn't.
I believe you will be afraid of me, Damon answered. That had silence falling amongst their little group. The vampires around them were still loudly conversing with people that they hadn't heard from in ages. Julian could feel them enjoying the sense of the shoe being on the other foot. They were now the ones on the inside, the ones with the power. Only a few realized the very important discussion going on here.
I won't.
Julian took Damon's hands in his.
I won't.
You are a hero. You have a very strong sense of right and wrong, a sense of honor, Damon told him. And justice, in your understanding, encompasses death, but only as the last resort.
And you don't believe that? I mean, I know you don't. You use death as a means to an end. If you think it's the best way, then that's what you do. But you didn't let me kill Kamorn.
Julian's voice rose, and the other voices around them quietened. Damon cupped his face. Not because I cared if he lived or died. I would crush him underneath my heel without a second thought, Julian, for the harm he has done you. I would do so for far less. Julian felt absurdly treasured and a little alarmed. Damon, of course, read his mind and understood his feelings. He had guessed what Julian's feelings would be. I do not want to take you to dark places. Solace is beautiful, and I would have you see it that way, without memories of anything else, Damon said.
You can't protect me from everything,
Julian said.
And I definitely don't want you to think you have to protect me from yourself. We can't be like that, Damon. We have to be in this together.
Damon did not look happy about it.
Will it be so terrible what you're going to do?
Julian found himself asking, and others were listening in. No, but you will see. Everyone will see why I am king, Damon answered softly. Julian couldn't completely hide the feeling of dread that pooled in his stomach. He looked into those fiery red eyes and thought of all he had known of Damon so far. He was wondrous in so many ways. He was scary in others, but that was only if Julian forgot who he was and viewed him as some stranger.
I won't be afraid,
Julian promised him.
I could never be afraid of you. And maybe, seeing what you do, I won't be afraid for you either.
Damon smiled. Yes, I suppose there is that benefit, and it will ensure that others who might think to do you harm will remember why they should not. Julian wondered if Damon was speaking to anyone in this room, or perhaps to Callie himself. Though how Callie would hear them here, he didn't know. Seeing everyone looking over at them, Balthazar let out a breathy laugh. Oh, I forgot to tell you, in all of the excitement about coming out as an immortal, that we, King Damon and I, and a few others, have determined to overthrow Solace and the Order. Yes, it's a coup, though since Damon is our king, maybe the Order is the coup. Anyways, we're going to storm Solace. Huge eyes were turned to him. Balthazar clapped his hands. "So if you'd like to come, let me know. We're going in now. We should leave now," Damon said. Balthazar's grin got a little crazier. "We'll be leaving now." Join us next time for episode 70, Risk.
You know what else is, 18 plus, artistic, and a little spicy? The uncut versions of these Everdark episodes. They're also available in the shop as downloadable audiobooks, which is great if you don't have a reliable internet connection. But they're also available, every single one of them so far that we've got out, on the members' private podcast. We do hope you check them out. We hope you enjoy them. And if you do purchase something, please do let us know what you think. We love hearing from you guys. Take care.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thelis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Last on Everdark. The repercussions of Balthazar revealing himself as Iros are starting to trickle in, but Damon has decided to keep the excitement going and to invade Solace. Everdark, Episode 70, Risk.
This is insane!
Camorn hissed. He looked around at the other vampires, trying to see reason in one of their eyes. He saw amusement. He saw slight approbation, but none of them seemed willing to contradict King Damon.
Artemis has countless spies within Solace. It will be a miracle if I get through the gate.
So your idea of helping our cause is to hide within the middle of our group and hope that no one notices?
Arceus asked with a frown.
You are the head of the Order. You need to use that for some common good for once.
Only you believe that the Order works for the common good.
Camorn snapped at the confessor. Fiona was standing beside Arceus, her old mentor, and Camorn believed the one person in existence that she truly loved. Too bad it seemed that Arceus loved Balthazar more. Not that Fiona would do anything about it. She had existed at the edges of everything, absent passion, trying to pretend that she had no emotions. But she couldn't help staying within Arceus's orbit once she had a chance again. Was she a true believer in King Damon? Or had she finally found a big enough reason to flee to Arceus's side once more?
The people who believe in the faith believe in the Order. Whatever jaded view you have is not shared by the majority of vampires.
Arceus argued in that earnest way of his that had always annoyed Camorn, but had that same majority swooning.
I had plenty of parishioners come to me and...
You were a mere confessor. I am the preceptor. I can assure you that the masses are content to believe the petty lies. None of them would want to think too deeply. They only do as I say because of the power I wield. The power that I wielded.
Camorn amended quickly with a grimace. Artemis had undoubtedly stripped him of that.
I am sure that everyone on the council has been contacted by Artemis, and he has turned them against me. The word will have already filtered down to those in the head positions of the Order that I am not to be trusted.
And it's not like your personality won you any followers, Balthazar muttered from beside Damon. It seemed that Balthazar and Damon were friends. They seemed so very easy together. It annoyed him to see it. Balthazar always made friends easily. He had hoped that Damon would be more discerning and not fall under the Iros's sway.
But we are just getting to know one another. He will see my worth. I may not be charming. I may not be easy, but I am useful.
Yet Camorn's head still snapped towards his old nemesis.
And all you've ever done, Balthazar, is run on your personality. Your charm, wide as an ocean, but deep as a puddle.
Balthazar laughed. That's more than you'll ever have, Camorn.
I am not an Iros, or the Iros. I cannot charm people. I am what I am. Giving speeches, no matter how good the subject matter, is unlikely to move people. You should send Balthazar in to use his mind control magic on them.
Caemorn suggested.
That does make more sense.
Because the moment that Balthazar appears, people will attack.
Arceus answered.
Even he cannot instantly take control of all their minds, not in the Spire by any event. You know quite well how our powers are muted.
Yes, well, some ability is better than none.
Caemorn muttered. Indeed. My king, truthfully, we would be better off if he wasn't known to be on our side. Balthazar spoke to Damon, who stood by the fireplace, one arm curled around Julian's broad shoulders. There are more people who hate him than even tolerate him. Him singing your praises is, well, he's toxic. Christian, who Caemorn admitted that he rather liked, said gently,
Surely there are some people who hold respect for him. He must have skills to have risen to preceptor. I don't believe that Callie is behind everything he's accomplished.
Christian looked down at the diamond that contained the soul that had evidently been stalking him.
He's skilled. He could be useful.
Indeed, I do have skills, but I'm telling you all that Artemis has seeded the entirety of the Order with people loyal to him.
Caemorn insisted.
Sending me inside on my own to try and argue your case will only lead to my second death. I will speak on your behalf once we all go into Solace together. I will support you entirely.
Damon had been stroking Julian's cheek with his free hand, and had not even looked at him during his speech, simply murmured, You are a strong vampire, Caemorn. You will get a chance to prove it tonight. Caemorn's lips flattened.
I think you are sending me to my second death. No matter how strong I am one vampire.
With 2 werewolves. You aren't leaving those things here. Balthazar flicked a finger at Farn and Tarun that were crouched by a tray of beef the staff had put together for them.
Yes, well, even so, a mob against 3 is still a mob.
He looked Damon boldly in the eye.
I am not a coward, and I am strong. But if you do not want my help, let me know now so that I might prepare myself.
Damon turned to look at him then. Those red eyes, the same as he had seen in the Night Hag and the other creatures in the Everdark, were fixed upon him, and he found himself going numb. The urge to drop to his knees and bow his head until his forehead touched the floor filled him, but he forced himself to remain upright, and there was an amused smile on the Vampire King's face. Admit what you were truly afraid of, Caemorn, Damon said simply. That no one respects you. That no one truly sees you as preceptor, but in name only. Strip that title away, and you are not the leader of the Order or of anything. Then what Arceus could do with simple words, you could not do with your 2 werewolves or your powerful weapons. That since there is the scent of blood in the water, that none will come to your aid. Those are the things that scare you. Caemorn went rigid. He could not hide the hurt and defensiveness he felt. King Damon was not saying these things unkindly, but as simple facts, and that made them devastating.
I did not rise through the ranks without making some enemies. Friendships are weakness. See what happened to Arceus because of his friendship with Balthazar. He is in exile.
I think you should look at Fiona. She ended up serving in the Order, but it wasn't at all what you thought it was. She came here, chose exile so that she could have some friends.
Julian pointed out with a scowl.
You are a Boy Scout. You would think that. But the people you admire so much have been on the outside. Absent Damon's appearance, they would still be on the outside.
Caemorn pointed out. Better that than on the inside like you and Callie's marionette, Balthazar said, crossing his arms over his chest. Christian patted his shoulder, but then turned towards Caemorn.
You're here too now, Caemorn. I think that you're taking this assignment the wrong way.
Going back to Solace, on my own, through the gate, and asking people to follow the Vampire King.
Caemorn's eyebrows rose.
Am I missing something?
Fiona told us that many of the people who are at Solace now have been impressed into the Order. They were forced to be a part of it. They feel no great loyalty to it yet. They're doing what they must because they've been kicked out of their houses, correct?
Christian asked. Caemorn really did like Christian. Unlike his best friend, he looked at things logically and understood that reason topped emotion every day.
That is true.
They have no one and nothing. I imagine that they're seeking someplace to belong, something to define them. The Order hasn't yet gotten their loyalty, as this is new, isn't it? I imagine many of them are looking for solutions, and someplace to truly belong.
Christian pointed out.
You don't have to inspire them with pretty speeches. You just have to lay out the facts that appeal to you about joining Damon. If they want to be on the right side of this, they need to join the king. Your master's betrayal is what brought you here. They've been betrayed by their masters too. Their whole houses abandoned them. Tell them that the only person they owe loyalty to is the one that wants them, King Damon.
Caemorn tapped his lower lip.
But I would be denigrating my own power. I am preceptor of the Order.
Julian rolled his eyes.
Oh, please. You're the ruler of nothing. Right now, you're a simple vampire who has no friends, no master, no house, and you have a price on your head. You're asking us for help. Do you really think that you're going to remain preceptor of the Order after this?
Caemorn said nothing. He still had a few other things up his sleeve to bargain with. He wanted to actually be more than a preceptor. He wanted a seat at the royal table, but it was too soon to ask for those things right now.
It's just that those who know me will have a hard time believing that I am urging them to serve another.
Caemorn partially lied. Christian argued back.
That is why it is so compelling if this message is coming from you. I'm betting that everyone knows that you look out for your best interest. If they see that you, of all people, are willing to serve Damon, then there must be something to it.
There was logic in this. The only problem was that Caemorn was certain that the moment he stepped through the gate, that there would be plenty of knives going for his throat and every other tender spot.
I'll go with you,
Sophia said, suddenly getting down from her perch on the edge of the couch and walking over to him. She had on a pretty powder-blue baby doll dress that made her look even more like a child. If there was anyone who would be less intimidating than Sophia, he couldn't imagine it. He was truly going to die.
Have you ever wondered about the business side of Wraith Rain? Or what Wraith does in her spare time? Or if the food in Dragon's Reign is actually real? The Wraith Rain team has a new podcast series, cheesily called The Wraith Rain Insider, where we talk about these kinds of backstage topics. If you're interested, you can find episodes of Wraith Rain Insider among the normal story content on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. And you can find it in its own playlist on YouTube. Our topics come directly from our readers and listeners. If you want us to discuss anything, just let us know in the comments.
While I welcome any assistance,
Caemorn said carefully.
You are not known to be a fighter, Sophia, though I...
He got nothing further out, as Sophia had suddenly jumped up from the floor, grabbed the front of his coat and dragged him down to her eye level. He felt something terribly sharp against his carotid. She was smiling still. Farn and Tarun looked over at them, saw it was Sophia. She smiled and called them good wolfies, and they simply turned back to their food, leaving him at her mercy.
Traitors,
he muttered under his breath, though he was sure with their werewolf hearing that they heard him. The twitching ears confirmed it. They would regret taking Sophia's side.
Now you cannot be mad with the good wolfies. Though you have treated them badly, they know that I can keep you safer than they can.
Sophia said.
When you can see what's going to happen, you won't have to be much of a fighter. You just have to be ready at the very right moment.
Sophia, Balthazar chuckled. Now that was badass. She turned her head and smiled at Balthazar winningly.
I am sure that everything I do tonight will earn me the 2 kitties that you promised me.
The smile left Balthazar's face and he tugged at his collar. We will discuss in the future, a far future time, any pets that will...
Thank you so much for the kitties, Balthazar. I'll name one Brown and the other Sugar.
She grinned so broadly that her eyes shut. Caemorn guffawed behind one hand. Clearly, Balthazar had a thing about cats, and so did Sophia, but in diametrically opposite ways, and Balthazar was losing this battle. Caemorn, though, swallowed when she drew up away from his throat a wicked-looking diamond-shaped blade. She slipped it somewhere in the folds of her dress and smiled at him again.
We will go together to Solace, and you will get Seer out of the dark place you are holding her.
He grimaced when they saw the state that Seer was in. When Seer told them about how she had been treated, Things might go even worse for him. That was why he had kept things back. He needed bargaining chips before Damon realized just how useful he could be.
So it really is true?
Fiona asked, almost faintly.
You really have Sia locked up somewhere in the spire?
Caemorn straightened up and smoothed the hands down the front of his jacket.
And I thought you were not as naive as Arceus, but I rather think that you're more so, Fiona. I wasn't the one who put her there.
No, you were the one who kept her there.
Sophia said coldly.
Of course I kept her there.
He snapped.
She is an immortal. Those used to be considered bad, remember? She was to tell us when King Damon came back, but it seems that she was playing us for fools all along. She was working the levers in order to thwart us this entire time.
He said the last to Damon, who responded, Sia knew all along what was going to happen. Everything, from the war to my return, was planned. I wish she had told me. I did not know how badly she would suffer, how badly all of you would suffer without my presence.
Would your decision have changed if you would have known the consequences of going to sleep?
Caemorn asked, which got him a sharp look from Balthazar and Arceus. They wouldn't dare talk to the king on his own level. But to his surprise and respect, Damon answered, Most likely not. I was heartsick and in desperate need for my fledgling. Damon once more caressed Julian's cheek with the back of his hand. Many of you have fledglings, but even for those of you who don't, I assure you that as time passes, the urge to take one is overwhelming. Once you've chosen someone, imagine that fledgling dying in your arms. Imagine that not happening 1 time, or 10, or 100, but close to 1,000. Damon's gaze went bleak, and he pulled Julian closer to him. He felt a stab of something go through him. He could have been that fledgling. He should have been. He looked at Julian beneath his lashes. Julian was pretty and heroic and passionate, but he was a child, hardly an appropriate consort for the king.
If it will truly aid your majesty for me to risk myself, I will.
Caemorn said with a half bow. He figured if Sophia was going, then they had a good chance to survive. He doubted she would let herself be killed when she was so close to finding her mistress, so best to be thought brave.
So the plan is that I go through the gate here with Sophia and gather people in the square to tell them of your good intentions. Fiona will teleport you, King Damon, and certain others into Solace out of sight. Hopefully, my words will assure the populace not to attack you on sight. In the meantime, we will have left the gate open for our allies to come in.
That sounds about right, Balthazar said dryly. Do not worry too much about the muting of your powers, Eiros. I am not affected in the same way. Besides, I have a plan beyond mind control, Damon said. This must be the plan that Damon was fearful about Julian knowing or seeing. Caemorn would not be turned off by whatever the vampire king would do in order to secure his rule. Caemorn understood how ruthless one had to be. Julian was just a boy. Lisette, who had been quiet up until this point, watching and listening to everything as always, stood up then and smiled at everyone as if she was going to give a recital.
We are going to my compound, yes? To use the gate there to Solace?
Cars are waiting for us outside to take us there. Balthazar gestured towards the front door. Damon, however, shook his head and said, Fiona, you will teleport us. The others will get in the cars and travel that way. Who constitutes us? Balthazar asked.
I know that I am a part of that us,
Julian said with a meaningful look at the vampire king. Of course you are, as are Balthazar, Arceus, and Christian. The others will come through the gate. Damon smiled at them. Fiona looked a little rattled.
You are so certain that I can phase through with so many to Solace, with the gate closed and the...
Arceus put a hand on her shoulder, stopping the flood of uncertainty.
You can do this, Fiona. I have no doubt about it.
Caemorn almost rolled his eyes. It was especially hard not to, especially when she beamed up at the bearded face of the confessor.
If we're ready to go...
Caemorn lifted an eyebrow. You were the one stalling, Balthazar reminded him with a shake of his head.
And now I'm not.
Caemorn remarked coolly.
We will meet you in Solus then, King Damon.
Lisette said with a bow of her head.
I look forward to seeing what the Vampire King can do.
And then you will wish to never see it again, Damon responded evenly. Lisette looked at him carefully from under her dark lashes, but she bowed again and headed towards the front door and the cars. All of House Ravenscroft was going, as were all of the Calais vampires who allied with them, not to mention a bunch of Mirror. It was a motley crew, but it was already a larger group than Caemon had expected. King Damon attracted people to him like moths to a flame. That attraction would grow, especially if he took down Solus with this mysterious plan of his. Caemon smiled mirthlessly. For once, he would be on the opposite side of his master, and it would be the side that would suit him best. He would be out from under Artemis's thumb. He would be free. And he would be with the vampire he had always felt should have been his master. Everything was working out. He hoped it would continue to do so.
Everyone, gather around and hold hands.
Fiona stuck out her own hands to her sides, taking one of Arceus's in her right hand and Julian's in her left. The rest of them each formed a link until they were a giant circle. Even Tarn and Farun had to join the circle, with people awkwardly touching their clawed paws.
Here we go.
Caemon hated teleporting. There was always this stomach-sinking sensation as they moved from one point in space to another. But it was over in a moment, and they were now in the Calais House gate to Solus. Caemon went up to the gate and cut his thumb with a small blade. He used his blood to draw the ancient symbols that should unlock the gate and held his breath. Had his master gotten ahead of him and barred the way? But the red letters suddenly glowed, then faded, and the gate appeared. Sophia stepped up to his side, swinging her childlike body. She looked like she was going on an outing, rather than on an attempted coup. She grinned up at him and took his hand, which he found odd, but did not reject her. Tarn and Farun stepped up beside them. Caemon turned and looked back at King Damon and said,
I will do all I can to prepare the people for your coming.
Damon smiled back at him. His expression, though, was somehow unreadable. Tonight, Caemon, you will find out just how strong you are, and you will earn your place among us. Caemon frowned slightly, but he sensed no lie in the Vampire King's words, so he simply bowed once more and turned towards the gate. As one, all four of them stepped through it. Like with the teleportation, there was this sense of movement, but it was more pleasant rather than sickening. The gate opened into the very square that he was to gather the people in and convince them of King Damon's rightful place as their leader. If he had thought he would need to actually gather the people to meet him there, he was incorrect. The square was completely filled. Hundreds of silver eyes were turned upon him, and Caemon felt a sickening twist of dread. A murmur became a shout, which was, "Get him! Get the traitor! Death to Caemon!" Join us next time for episode 71, Natural Order.
You know what's really great? Our sponsors. Who are you guys? Without your support, we wouldn't be able to produce this multi-actor podcast and any of our upcoming projects. Some Everdark related, some not Everdark related. Because of you, we don't have to spend all of our time on social media or rely on mysterious algorithms that change from week to week. Instead, we can simply produce the best content we can and keep the new episodes coming every week. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to become a member of wraithrain.com. That is my serial website with everything but the Amazon exclusive stuff published on it. Not only do you get the uncut and uninterrupted episodes of Everdark, but you can read over 115 chapters of the sequel, Everdark Academy, and all my other written gay romantic stories, both ongoing and completed. Follow the link in the notes to sign up.
The Everdark Podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer, Edited by Matthew Prince. Continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Everdark, Episode 71. Natural Order. Last on Everdark. Caemorn is told in no uncertain terms that he is going to Solace to spread the good word that Daemon has returned. Caemorn is certain that this will lead to his second death, and he has so many plans for power that have been unfulfilled. Yet he realizes he has no choice but to do what the king wishes. He returns to Solace and finds a crowd waiting for him. "You've got to tell me what you've got in store for Caemorn," Balthazar insisted to Daemon. He couldn't help the wreath of smiles that danced across his lips. You were practically using a voice that spelled his doom. Not to mention having him go in there with just Sophia. I mean, we could have accessed Solace through the gate with him. So, what's the plan?
You were practically rubbing your hands together in glee.
Christian shook his head.
Though he did kill Julian's parents, so maybe I should be doing that as well. What do you have in plan for him, Daemon?
Julian, who had been quite silent about Caemorn in Balthazar's point of view, straightened up and met their king's eyes.
I hope it's something appropriate for what he's done.
Daemon cupped Julian's cheek. There is nothing that would be enough to make up for what he's done. Not even a second death. But I sense. Daemon's red eyes blazed for a moment. He has yet more to give in this. As to what is awaiting him beyond the gates, Daemon smiled, almost malevolently at the now-closed portal. It is exactly what he has earned in regards to his role as preceptor.
He has been a very bad preceptor.
Arceus stroked his beard. Yes. Daemon smiled broadly. Yes, he has. And now that is coming home to roost.
He stained the ground at Solis with blood slaves.
Fiona's lips curled in disgust.
By pressing people into the Order who have no faith, he's completely undermined it.
Indeed. But the Order needs to be swept away and made anew. Daemon reached over and put a hand on Arceus's shoulder, causing the bearded confessor to look shocked. But I am certain that you are up for the job, Arceus.
You mean for me to lead the order? To be preceptor?
Arceus blinked.
There would be no one better.
Fiona enthused. In this, he and Fiona were in complete agreement.
You would be perfect in that role, Arceus.
I don't know what to say. I am but a simple priest.
Arceus stammered out. Daemon squeezed his shoulder. On the contrary, you are so much more than that.
Maybe we should not count our chickens before they've hatched.
It was Lizette who spoke, as she and the rest of her house and Balthazar's came down through the door into the basement. Balthazar let out a sharp bark of laughter. I thought like you did, Lizette. I actually worried about things like this. But when you see him in action, you won't quite believe it.
But the spire mutes our gifts. Won't yours be muted, King Daemon?
She asked. No, I am king. Daemon answered with his favorite line, but Balthazar was starting to understand how much power and meaning was truly in that statement. I admit I'm rather excited to see what you do, Balthazar confessed. Julian, who had been chewing on his inner cheek and watching this interchange carefully, said,
So you could go in there and use the Iros gift to simply turn everyone to your side. But you're not going to, right?
No, my fledgling. While that is a useful gift, it is not impressive to those gazing on. Besides, I want their minds to change naturally. They will choose to serve me, Daemon said as he stroked Julian's fine skin. What was left unsaid, but what Balthazar heard nonetheless, was the threat. And if they do not serve, they will get their second deaths. Fiona, I wish you to teleport us to the swamp area, about half a mile from the spire, Daemon told her. She looked tense, but one encouraging look from Arceus had her nodding.
I can do that.
Daemon turned back to Lizette and the other eager vampires in the room, crowding the stairs and up into the house above. He did not open his mouth, but all heard his words. My children, once the time is right, the gate will open and you should come through. I would show you solace as it should be, and the Lady Seer will await to greet you. Balthazar felt the waves of amazement, fear, and some distrust from the listeners. They couldn't believe that they were going to be on the winning side for once. They were waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under them and to be dumped back onto the street. Balthazar understood their worries, though he wanted to assure them that they were unfounded. If he did so after Damon had spoken, it would have undermined the king, so he remained silent. They would see the truth of it when it happened.
We need to hold hands again,
Fiona said, and extended her hands to the sides. Once more they formed a circle, but this time it was smaller, and there were no reeking werewolves in the group. Caemorn really should have them bathe. That was the last thought that Balthazar got out before they were teleported to the Everdark. He was knee-deep in slimy water, and a bulbous-tipped reed was banging against his lips. He let out a sound of displeasure. I thought you were Wyvern reborn, Balthazar hissed. Why are my Italian shoes and tailored pants destroyed?
I never teleported here before from Earth.
Fiona protested, but she looked stricken, because he wasn't the only one with water up to his knees. The top of Damon's boots stuck just an inch above the swamp's surface. Balthazar guessed their king did not care, because it would likely give him an excuse to get naked and proudly greet all of the vampire's sans clothes.
I am so sorry, King Damon,
she cried. But Damon held up a hand and said, It is perfect. This is exactly where I wish to be.
In the middle of a swamp?
Julian slapped his neck as one of the blood-sucking insects decided the king's fledgling was worthy to be fed on. In the midst of life, Damon grinned. Balthazar could see the spire and the lights of Solace at a distance. Fiona had gotten the distance about right. That she hadn't landed them somewhere dry was probably too much to ask. Still, his shoes were filling with water, and he felt things sliding against his calves. He was not dressed appropriately for a coup. He frowned as he heard distinctly the sound of many voices raised in excitement, jubilation, bloodthirsty ire. He couldn't tell. When he tried to reach his mind out to touch theirs lightly, it was like he was trying to figure out the shape of an object swathed in thick cotton. The spire was doing its best to mute his powers, as always. I think Caemorn has gathered people in the square already, Balthazar said with a frown. He had truly thought that Caemorn would fail at this, or go hide in the spire until they sorted everything. But it looked like he had been as good as his word. In a manner of speaking, yes, Damon said. And then he was turning away from the spire, the people and the lights, towards the darkness of the swamp. Balthazar would have enjoyed the beauty of the Everdark, something that had been robbed from him for decades. But standing in black, cold water was really distracting. Julian and Christian, though, were looking up at the sky with its twin moons and impossible amount of stars, talking softly to one another of the majesty of the place, how the air smelled and even tasted different, and how they longed to not only see Solace, but Nightvallen again. They were already speaking about how they would explore once things with Cully settled. Balthazar's heart did a little dance in his chest as he considered how things would change for him once Damon was installed as king. As his eyes peered into the darkness of the swamp, he thought, There will be nowhere that is barred from me. I will be able to go anywhere. I am Iros, and the king's best friend. The thought of it was suddenly so intoxicating as he realized how near that might be. It wasn't just a dream that he had never quite believed would be true. It wasn't some revenge fantasy. They were about to take Solace. It was impossible, and yet it was true. He turned his attention back to Damon. Damon had stepped apart from them, and there was this feeling coming from him that was similar to what he had felt when Damon communed with the earth at his house. Arceus stepped closer to Balthazar. The confessor whispered,
Do you feel it, Balthazar?
Balthazar nodded but asked, What is it? There's like a shiver in the air and water, Arceus said.
He's connecting to this place, to the creatures here. I cannot explain it. It is like...
Hearing a call, Balthazar murmured. He could hear it himself now. It was like a low thrum that was building up in volume. It had started as a vibration in the air and water, but now it was a vibration in him. And not only him, but in everything and everyone. Damon stood still. He's waiting for who will answer his call. He didn't have long to wait. Balthazar let out a sharp hiss of breath, as suddenly there were hundreds of red, flaming eyes on all sides of them, except from the direction of the spire. He instinctively prepared to fight. The Everdark's inhabitants that were not vampires were highly predatory, and would give as well as they got from vampires in a fight, and the creatures that had answered Damon's call were some of the most fierce and most frightening. There were night hags of every description. Most looked like wizened old peasant women that he would have recognized from Earth, but one look into their faces and the rapaciousness was evident. They came across as innocent old women until they were perched on one's chest and ripping out one's throat. There were creatures similar to the Wendigo. Their bodies were practically skeletal. The shortest were 7 feet tall with long, spindly arms ending in black-tipped claws. There were more werewolves that put Tarn and Farun to shame in their size and savagery. There were amorphous jellies that if they touched one's skin, they would dissolve in seconds. There were winged things with dragon-like snouts and leathery bodies. There were the skipping, hissing, loathsome creatures that looked to be made of melting clay that swarmed vampires in packs before sucking them dry of all their juices. Balthazar also saw the strange bog lights that led people to their dooms. There were lizards of enormous size and appetites. There were things that slithered and cawed and croaked and pranced. He caught sight of beings made of fog who looked like beautiful women until they opened their mouths and their heads became skulls that screamed and sucked down souls. Then there were the trees that were not trees, that walked. Beings of rock that ground their way forward followed them, and there were so many that Balthazar could not count them, and he had never seen their like before. He hoped never to see it again. But one thing these monsters all had was Damon's blazing red eyes. They reflected his light. They were his creatures.
Have you ever wanted to ask me a question about the Everdark, other stories, or my exciting writer's lifestyle? Every 2 or 3 months, I post a Q&A podcast with questions collected from you. When the time comes for another one, we'll send out an email to our mailing list and post on our YouTube community channel. If you want to participate, make sure you're subscribed to at least one of those. Links are in the notes.
He went to his fledgling and tugged both Christian and Julian into the center of their group. It took some doing, because the boys, far from being afraid, were fascinated and wanted to go closer to the monsters that surrounded them. He firmly brought them away from creatures and kept them between himself, Arceus, and Fiona. Fiona's eyes were practically bugging out of her head. Her gaze flickered from one creature to the next. He saw her itching for a weapon. But really, if the creatures all attacked, their only hope would be Damon or her ability to teleport them away from here. Arceus, though, was as amazed and in awe as the boys. His lips were parted, and his eyes were wide with wonder and not fear. That was the problem with religious people, in Balthazar's opinion. Their faith made them oblivious to fear.
Amazing. Truly amazing. It is not just these beings that have answered his call, Balthazar. Every single creature in the Everdark is aware he has returned. The king! The king! Can you not hear their voices raised in his glory?
Of course, the monsters weren't speaking English or anything like that. But when Balthazar allowed himself to touch their minds, it was as Arceus had said. The sense of blessing they felt to be in Damon's presence was so intense that he was nearly bowled over by it. These things that seemed to hate vampires as a rule, did not hate Damon. They loved him. They worshipped him. Damon slowly turned around. His eyes were filled with that red witchfire. He was smiling, though, and gestured for Julian to come to him. The young man did so without any trepidation, or so it seemed. When Christian started after him, Balthazar put a firm grip on his waist. His fledgling raised an eyebrow. "Monsters," Balthazar said simply. "You are not to pet them, no matter how cute they look."
None of these are very cute,
Christian pointed out. "Exactly. Yet you seem to want to scratch them behind the ears," Balthazar retorted. That had Christian smiling faintly. Balthazar saw that his fledgling was continuously fingering the diamond that held David. He almost wished that Christian would drop the damned thing into the muck. That would be the end of that problem.
Oh, look, Damon's having them approach Julian.
Christian murmured. Balthazar's gaze slid back to their king and his fledgling. Sure enough, one of the ugliest night hags he had ever seen, wearing only a tattered black cloak and white hair swathed around her desiccated form, approached them. She kept her head low as she tottered through the black water, making a wheezing sound in the back of her throat. Balthazar grimaced, but Julian smiled at the hideous thing and inclined his head. She let out this tittering laugh, and then capered back into the crowd of creatures, pleased as punch, and bragging to the others of her being blessed by the vampire king's fledgling. It was then that the other leaders, he supposed, of the monsters lined up to meet Julian. There was a 10-foot-tall werewolf that was half as wide, with muscles rippling under pure white fur. There was the Wendigo creature, who lightly passed its claws over Julian's head, not touching him, but close, which inspired Julian to circle around its withered form. Julian's thoughts told him that he was trying to truly believe that a thing with more bone and leathery skin than flesh could truly be alive on some level. The massive, dragon-like creature flew in a circle and blew fire against the moons just for Julian's delight. The diaphanous, ghost-like women that glided 2 feet above the water simpered and smiled at the young man without showing the horrors beneath. And on the procession went. "Do you not wish to greet them, Balthazar?" Damon looked back at him with a grin. "You know very well that they all creep me out, my king," Balthazar sent over their mind link, while he said out loud, "They wish only you and your fledgling's attention, King Damon. I would not take that away from them with second best." Arceus guffawed into one hand.
He is the only one you'll admit you're second best to, with no sense of false pride.
I believe we are seeing more of a miracle in Balthazar than in this.
Fiona smirked, her fear receding slightly as the cavalcade continued with no sign of violence. She had started to relax. He raised an eyebrow at her. She, surprisingly, stuck a tongue out at him. He blinked. Fiona being playful? Maybe the world really is coming to an end, Balthazar murmured. Christian gently elbowed him. It was his fledgling who asked,
Well, what has he brought them here for? Just to greet him and Julian?
"I highly doubt that," Balthazar said. There was a shout from the spire. He turned around, frowning. He strained his eyes, but he could see very little of what was going on in the square. There seemed to be more people there. They were like a surging mass. Caemorn must have really gotten the crowd whipped up. They would make a grand entrance then. Balthazar's lips flattened. He really had hoped that Caemorn would fail. The Cully vampire was insufferable in general, and this would make him only more so. Damon might even be impressed with him and take him into the inner circle with himself and Arceus. That would be abhorrent. Well, maybe not that bad, but it was hardly his fantasy. I should be content that so much more than I ever imagined is coming true. Well, maybe I did imagine it, but still. Caemorn killed Julian's parents. He is the cause of Heath and Celine's second deaths as well. But he couldn't truly blame Caemorn for those. Even if Caemorn dangled something before Celine and Timothy, that was on them for betraying him and their house. Caemorn was just a creep. Damon was turning now. The procession was finally semi-over. Or maybe the time limit had run out. Damon had an arm around Julian's shoulder and was kissing his fledgling on the temple as if to reward him for being good and brave, which Julian had been. Though Julian and Christian were both young, they were open in ways he had not been when first turned. Perhaps it was because of the life they had both lived with parents who were scholars and constantly sought knowledge. They were adventurers on their web series. They had never been fakes, like so many were in that arena. So even now, he wasn't surprised to see Christian and Julian's heads craning about them, trying to soak in everything, and not making a judgment about what they were seeing. They were like twin sponges. Were all vampire fledglings this way? He didn't think so. He knew that he was like a proud papa who believed his child was special and above the crowd. But he thought that might actually be true of both of them. Julian was, after all, Damon's fledgling, the one who had survived his blood when thousands, evidently, had not. No wonder he didn't believe that Julian would survive. And he had turned Christian, who was the first speaker to the dead in how long? Way long. He was Eiros, of course, so his fledgling would be special simply because of that. But Christian was sensitive and intelligent and courageous and...
Why are you looking at me with that misty-eyed expression?
Christian's eyebrows were raised. What? I'm not looking at you in any way.
You have tears in your eyes.
Christian reached up and wiped one of these non-existent tears away. I'm allergic to things here. He lied. Christian frowned.
Vampires aren't allergic, are they?
He thought about lying, but said, No, they are not. You and your inquisitive mind. I cannot make up anything without you questioning it.
No, I suppose you can't. You know that I value knowledge too much,
Christian said. And I value you, Balthazar confessed softly. Christian smiled so beautifully then. Arceus was beaming with unabashed tears in his eyes while Fiona looked on thoughtfully. Come, Eiros, Damon said as he drew even with them and started leading them towards solace. We can tell our fledglings we love them ever so much more out of the swamp. Yes, I would like to dry out. I believe there is mud between my toes. Balthazar picked up one foot, and there was so much suction that he almost lost his shoe altogether. I really did not dress appropriately,
Only hip waders would have helped.
Arceus said, and patted Fiona's shoulder to take the sting from his words. Why aren't the monsters going back into the swamp? Balthazar asked as he realized the creatures were keeping track with them, following after them towards the spire. Because they are coming with us, to show my children the natural order of things, Damon answered blithely. You don't think they are going to cause a panic or anything like that, do you? Balthazar's eyebrows crawled up into his hairline. Oh, I imagine they will, but not until people actually realize that they are there. They have other things on their minds. Damon tilted his head towards Solace. Balthazar saw flames rising. Caemorn must have gotten them to build a bonfire to welcome the king. Of course, he would do something dramatic like that. Well, Caemorn's ready to welcome us, Balthazar said bitterly. Damon let out a delighted laugh. Oh, Eiros, you do not understand what's happening at all, do you? You are being jealous for no reason. Balthazar warmed slightly at the king's conspiratorial tone. He was still the favorite then. It is just that Caemorn has gotten a bonfire ready for you and arranged a crowd. I thought he would fall flat on his face, Balthazar admitted. Maybe I hoped he would.
I thought so too,
Fiona added with a rueful look.
I really thought that everyone hated him, and given half a reason they'd turn against him.
Damon looked between them with a smile on his lips. That bonfire isn't to welcome us. The crowd intends to roast Caemorn alive on it. Join us next time for episode 72, Madness.
In case you don't already know, Everdark comes in ebooks, audiobooks, and hardcover books with dust jackets. The hardcovers are signed and shipped by me from my little condo, and each hardcover has a new custom illustration. If you're like me, you don't have a lot of space for physical things, so I wanted to make sure that the Everdark books are collectibles that will look beautiful on your shelf. The link to all the hardcovers is in the notes.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Everdark, Episode 72, Madness. Last on Everdark. Our fearless group has gone to the city of Solace in the Everdark. Fiona used her gift to get them into the Everdark, but landed them in the swamp. Damon didn't seem to mind. Balthazar's shoes did, as he called to him many of the creatures in the Everdark to greet his new fledgling and join them in meeting the vampires in Solace. As they all march towards the spire, Damon reveals that the bonfire they see ahead is actually to roast Camorn on. Julian shouldn't have cared when Damon told him that Camorn's fate was to be burned alive in a bonfire. His stomach shouldn't have lurched. His heart should not have started banging against the inside of his chest like a drum. A mix of adrenaline and alarm shouldn't have flooded his mouth, but it did.
He killed my parents. He admitted it without a moment's hesitation. He acted as if not killing me was some kind of success story.
Julian knew that vampires didn't see mortal lives the same way that he and Christian did. Most of them, like Camorn, who was 1,000 years old, were too far distant from the humans they once were. And if Julian were honest, did he mourn when a cow died, or a chicken, or any other food animal if they weren't a pet? No. He could make thousands of distinctions between humans and the animals they ate versus vampires and the humans that they consumed. But those were distinctions that only those who had just lost their mortality would likely understand. In some ways, vampires were no longer human beings. No matter that vampires came from humans and could not exist without them. It was like a caterpillar and a butterfly. They were simply too different.
But whatever is happening to Camorn is because of his own actions.
Julian reminded himself.
I didn't sick these people on him. They're going against him because of the actions and words he took and said as preceptor. And Damon warned him that it would be dangerous. He even knew it would be dangerous. He's reaping what he's sown.
And yet, Julian did not feel happy about this. In fact, he felt awful about it. He doubted his parents would be happy with him either. He wasn't like Camorn. He didn't allow people within his orbit to be hurt if there was anything he could do about it, no matter who they were or what they had done. It wasn't for him to judge them forever. He remembered clearly watching the first Lord of the Rings movie with his mother, where Gandalf scolded Frodo for wishing Bilbo had killed Gollum when he'd had the chance so long ago. The wizard had made clear that everyone had a part to play, not to mention that it was far easier to say someone was deserving of death and making that happen, while it was almost impossible to bring back those that deserved life. His mother had been nodding along to that line. Julian had scoffed at it.
You think it's bunk?
His mother had asked with a slight smile on her lips.
Pretty much. I know that Gollum stops Frodo from keeping the ring in the end, but that was just, I don't know, a coincidence.
He'd answered her with a shrug.
Or because the author determined that. It wasn't real life. Real life doesn't work that way.
No, you're right, that life doesn't work that way. It can be quite a bit crueler. But the thing is...
And here she'd paused for a moment, gathering her words.
Life is precious. And when we think that it would be better to take it away from someone, we need to be very careful about that, because it diminishes the entire world when we do so. It diminishes us.
Thinking of Camorn now, he felt the same arguments within himself. How many people would Camorn hurt if he were allowed to go on? Julian didn't know. It wasn't that he had killed Julian's parents out of bloodlust or anything like that. He'd broken with Cully now, so it wasn't like he was going to kill people again for the immortals' benefit. So was there a clear and present danger? Julian could accept his second death if that was the case, but if it wasn't, It was more complicated than that. Why couldn't he just let Caemorn's fate be decided by others? Why did he have this need to interfere? Dying would be the preceptor's just deserts, right? Right?
But if he dies like this, I will never feel like there is true justice for my parents' deaths. He'll be yet another victim that I won't be able to hate purely and completely.
He felt Damon's eyes upon him, even as Julian's thoughts were like a squirrel chasing its own tail. The Vampire King knew what he was thinking.
Is it Caemorn's time to die?
Julian asked him.
Why did Sophia go with him if it was? And is she in danger?
A mob does not differentiate between the innocent and the guilty. Damon responded, even as one of his hands drifted up and down Julian's back. Julian's eyes widened.
So both of them are going to die a second death unless we do something, right? I mean, we can't let Sophia get hurt.
If you think you must save Caemorn in order to save Sophia, then that is what you must do. Damon's voice was even, and showed no indication what he wanted one way or the other.
Am I right about that?
Julian looked over at Balthazar. The vampire lord seemed as conflicted about Caemorn being killed as he was. Sophia is very good at taking care of herself. She is too near her goal to fail now, Damon answered finally.
Yeah, but I can't just...
Julian's mind voice dropped off. What couldn't he just? Let Caemorn die?
I can't do it. I can't just leave him to be killed if I can stop it. Why can't I?
Damon gave him a small smile. Because you value life, even Caemorn's life.
Will you save him?
Julian asked. In the end, this decision is yours. Julian let out a huff of air.
You're going to make me choose?
Would you really want me to take the choice from you?
No. No, of course not.
So, it is yours. Caemorn as a roasted charcoal briquette. Part of me likes that, but another part is conflicted. Balthazar mused. Are we really going to let someone else torch him? He may deserve it, but shouldn't the people he's actually harmed decide his fate and give him his punishment? Fiona had her arms crossed over her chest.
Caemorn has made many enemies, but still, to watch him burn? No, I find no joy in it.
She shuddered.
We should not allow such injustice, King Damon,
Arceus said gravely.
I am hardly a fan of his, but we cannot let the unthinking mob rule us.
Callie wants him dead in this way. He doesn't get to choose.
Julian's eyes narrowed. That was the answer. This was Kali's attempt to silence Caemorn. It wasn't justice. Caemorn's death would do nothing to answer for his parents' deaths. He had to stop this. Julian found himself striding quickly ahead, actually outpacing Damon and the others. The creatures that inhabited the Everdark formed a horseshoe around their group, and the ones at the outer tips actually drew near him, so that they were walking beside him as he strode towards Solace and the spire. The bonfire's flames reached high into the night sky, as if wanting to touch the stars and moons. Julian half expected Damon to rush up beside him, put a hand on his shoulder and tell him to slow down, to stay back within the safety of the group, like Balthazar was doing with Christian, who clearly wanted to join him. But the Vampire King did not do this. When he chanced to glance over his shoulder, he saw Damon walking calmly beside Balthazar and Arceus. He gave Julian a smile of understanding, but his mind was blank. Or rather, Julian could not read his thoughts. Damon was blocking him from them.
He wants me to do whatever I'm going to do on my own. It's completely up to me. He wasn't kidding that it's my choice, but how much leash do I have before he pulls me back?
Julian knew that he was a complete noob compared to the vampires likely at Solace. He had managed to use his powers half a dozen times, but really he was in no way proficient. Everything he did was out of instinct. It had served him well so far, but he did not know that there was a limit to how much he could do when he was so young and untrained. Yet Damon allowed him to stride forward, to make a decision about Caemorn's fate. He swung back around towards the city and its gleaming spire. The Everdark was amazing. If they weren't here for a coup, he would have been grabbing Christian by the hand and dragging his best friend everywhere, to look at everything, to experience it all. The creatures that followed after them and were near him were the stuff of nightmares, and yet there was a beauty to them that he could not deny. He felt as if he was part of the same ecosystem, and there was this connection between him and them that the vampires in the spire ignored, or maybe didn't even know about. They served Damon, and so did he. They were about 100 feet from the edge of the square. From what he could see, the square was located at the top of several staircases of that unique white stone. The spire, also of that white stone that shone softly in the dark, jutted up from the ground behind it. There were other structures, graceful buildings and soaring towers beyond the spire, as well as what looked like gardens. Solace, like Nightvallen, was an oasis of civilization within the wilderness of the Everdark. The crowd of vampires was much more visible now. There were hundreds of them, all dressed in robes similar to the ones that Arceus wore. Goth priests and priestesses packed every available space. The hair on the back of his neck stood up as he heard their voices raised in angry shouts and derisive taunts. Those were aimed at the two figures that stood on a platform in the square's center. He immediately recognized Kaymorn's upright form from the firelight lining his body. Beside him was a girlish figure which had to be Sophia. He heard howls, and on the other side of the fire, Tarn and Farun were chained by the neck, wrist, and ankles. His vampiric sense of smell wafted over to him, not just the smell of burning wood, but blood, werewolf blood and pain. Julian frowned deeply. This looked like a witch trial, which meant no kind of trial at all. This was not a trial where there was a judge and a jury and lawyers to argue for and against Kaymorn, but just sheer rage at the man who had held the reins of power. Everything that was wrong they blamed on him. Whatever they blamed Kaymorn for, it was Kali behind him pulling the strings all along. That wasn't to say that Kaymorn was a good guy, far from it. But this wasn't his vision of the vampire world. This was Kali's. A woman with startlingly red hair was speaking. Her voice boomed and seemed to carry far further than it should have been able to without a PA system. She was saying,
Kaymorn is a traitor down to his bones. All these centuries he has told us one thing, but now we know the truth, that he believes none of it. And now he would have us throw away our faith and bow down before the immortals once more.
I'm so excited to launch a new gay fantasy romance series called The Night Prince. It's already in the site for members, and I am always impatient to hear what my members have to say after every new chapter. Here's the summary. Best friends, Declan and Finley's normal lives ended the day the Leviathan broke through to Earth. Only the arrival of the Sun Elves and their powerful King Aquilin saved humanity and drove the Leviathan back into the Underdark. Now Declan, Finley, and the rest of the survivors find themselves in a new world full of magic and danger, where elves, dwarves, and other high fantasy beings are real, and their neighbors, whether the humans or the high fantasy beings want it or not. Working at a dwarven tavern, Declan wants to keep a low profile, but when he starts exhibiting dark powers no human should have, he draws the interest of the Sun King himself. Aquilin, the Sun King, in turn finds himself captivated by the supposedly human young man and determines to uncover the truth behind Declan's powers, even if that truth makes Declan his enemy. In turn, Finley desperately wants to be the first ever human to gain magical abilities. He finds an unlikely ally in this quest in the Sun King's rakish best friend, Lord Raeliff. But is Raeliff's help born out of kindness for an underdog, or because he has reasons of his own to stay close to Finley? Whatever the answers, Declan, Finley, Aquilin, and Raeliff are running out of time to learn the truth, because in the dark, the Leviathan waits.
I thought they saw Damon as the good guy, but maybe not. Not if he's the one that'll upend Callie's apple cart.
Kaymorn, who was standing stiff and tall, surveyed the crowd without any seeming fear, which Julian gave him quite a bit of credit for. It must have been terrifying to look out on a sea of faces who only wished you dead. His hands were bound behind his back. They must have grabbed him the moment he stepped foot into the Everdark. With the muting effect of the spire, Julian wondered if he hadn't been able to bring the dead to life, to serve him at all, or if he'd just been taken off guard. Julian glanced to the right and left. There were capering night hags, the desiccated Wendigo-like creatures, massive werewolves, and other things that he could not put a name to, and might not want to, keeping pace with him. He had a feeling that all of these creatures would be dancing through his dreams for days and weeks, or probably months to come. Yet they were on his side, thankfully. As they approached the edge of the first set of steps, he saw that the ground was disturbed. One skeletal hand was thrust up through the earth and slowly flexing its bony fingers. So Camorn was not completely without power, it was just taking him time to summon. From the looks of it, with all the disturbed dirt and the shine of bone against the dark earth, it appeared that he was trying to summon an army of the dead. So while he stood there on that platform, looking unconcerned, the truth was his concentration must be on bringing up a bumper crop of skeletons. Julian's eyes were drawn back to the platform towards Sophia, who was also bound, though like Camorn, her attention seemed to be fixed anywhere but at the fire that would be her second death, if they didn't do something about it. The thought of them tossing a child into the flames, a child who had nothing to do with Camorn other than that she had volunteered to accompany him, caused rage to boil up in Julian's chest. He would not let this mob destroy two of their own because they were being whipped up into a frenzy by a liar that served Kali. So far, none of the vampires had noticed their approach. All of them were so riveted to the platform and the fire that none of them cared what was coming up from the swamp. Julian knew the moment that Camorn saw them, though, as the preceptor stood up a little taller, and his eyes widened. It was Sophia, though, that caused everyone else to know that they were there. She jumped up and down, her hands still tied behind her back, and said,
Julian! The king's fledgling is here!
As is the king.
Julian called back. He started up the stairs just as the vampires turned as one to face them. The wave of shock, then alarm, then fear was practically palpable. Julian didn't know if it was his Eiros ability to read minds that was telling him this, or if it was simply obvious from the vampires' shocked white faces. The nearest night hag let out a cackling laugh, and her long, sharp claws flexed at her sides. She saw prey. The werewolves beside him lifted their heads back and howled. Tarn and Farun added their voices to the group howl, and it was the saddest music that caused Gooseflesh to raise on Julian's arms, and quite a few others. At that moment, Julian felt Damon give him the reins of the creatures. They were his to use. He could command them to do anything. The vampires nearest to him were so startled that they tried to walk backwards and get away from him and the rising horde, but they soon bumped into those behind them. There was hardly any room in the square to breathe, let alone retreat. Julian had made it up to the main square. He looked to the creatures on either side of him and simply said,
Clear a path for the king.
They didn't need to be told twice. The creatures surged forward. The night hags bounded into the fray. Wyvern vampires were teleporting wildly out of the way, while the others scrambled to get out of the lunge distance of sharpened claws. The werewolves bared their teeth as they ran full bore into the vampires, who hissed and spat in response. But these werewolves were bigger than their prey, standing over 7 feet tall with necks half as wide. While there were undoubtedly vampires that could have taken these down, none would risk it when there were over a dozen surging through them. The Wendigo-like creatures let out shrill, ear-piercing shrieks as they lumbered forward, swinging their long arms in front of them that no one wanted to touch. Soon, there was a broad avenue between where Julian stood at the top of the stairs and the platform. The fiery-haired woman walked to the front of the platform, her face ashen, as Damon stepped up beside Julian. As soon as Damon's feet touched the square, light flared across the stones and ran to the spire, where it climbed the entire length and sent a beam of vivid red light streaming into the sky like a beacon. The creatures of the Everdark all let out a throaty call that echoed everywhere. Now that is awesome. Balthazar chuckled as he checked out the light.
It's like the bat signal.
Christian murmured, Go to Camorn. Decide his fate, Julian. Damon murmured,
Is it a weakness that I can't kill him?
Julian asked. No, you leave death to me, the Vampire King said, and Julian felt a cold wind blow past him. So far, nothing that Damon had done had frightened or worried Julian, but the Vampire King had been specific that he feared Julian would see him differently after this coup, so that meant something else was going to happen. But what? Do not walk or run, Julian. Try teleporting to Caemon, the Vampire King suggested.
But what about the muting?
It does not affect us. Try. Damon gently pushed him forward, rather like a father would do to a baby bird to urge it to fly. Julian's eyes narrowed at the platform. He remembered the sensation of moving without physically moving his legs when Fiona and Damon had teleported him. He imagined stepping forward onto the platform. He also imagined him making a fool of himself, which really didn't matter. But he didn't want Damon to be shown up by his failure.
You can do it, Julian. I feel it,
Christian said.
Just step forward.
He gave his best friend a grateful smile. He decided that he would run forward, and if he didn't teleport, no one would know. But if he did, then it would be the best. He pushed off his back foot and leaped. He slammed into Caemon's chest. The preceptor luckily braced himself somehow, and they didn't topple over. As it was, Caemon let out an oomph and looked down at Julian, who was several inches shorter than him. He raised an eyebrow.
Practicing teleporting by the spire. That was bold.
Caemon murmured.
Hey, I'm here to save you. And Damon told me to do it.
Julian retorted.
Would you jump off a cliff if he told you to?
Yes, wouldn't you?
Julian challenged, and something flashed within Caemon's silver eyes. He didn't say anything. Instead, he simply and gracefully lowered himself to his knees and pressed his forehead against the wooden platform.
The king comes.
I'll kneel too.
Sophia said.
But I'd like my hands released first. I'm not as flexible as Caemon.
Julian saw that her dress and hair were mussed. There were smudges on her cheeks from where someone had backhanded her. Rage bubbled up inside of him.
Sophia, who did this to you?
Julian cried as he reached towards the almost delicate cuffs that enclosed her childlike wrists. He saw that her skin was bruised and bloody from wherever the metal had touched her.
You will not release the prisoners.
It was one of the vampire confessors who had been on the stage with them. She lunged towards Julian, but she didn't get very far. Julian had a chance to turn and bring up an arm to block her blow, but there was no blow. Julian's eyes went wide as he stared into hers. Her whole body had been turned into parts, little pieces. Mere dots of her suddenly started streaming down the avenue that the creatures had created towards Damon. Julian watched as she was simply ripped apart, and she watched him back. He tracked these remnants of her as they streamed towards Damon, and the Vampire King absorbed them. His red eyes glowed hotter as he simply drained her to nothing. It was horrifying, but it was beautiful too, and Julian's tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. It was nothing a human being could ever do. For one moment, Julian imagined every single vampire but those loyal to Damon being turned into that shimmery dust and Damon drawing in that life. There was silence and stillness in the crowd before the panic began. Then the shrill cries began. The people pushed and shoved each other to get away, causing many to fall and be trampled beneath others' feet. Julian heard Damon murmur, "Stop," and everyone ceased to move. They were frozen in mid-step, their mouths gaping as cries were stuck in their throats. They couldn't even blink. "Iros," Damon simply said, "handle this for me." "Come to order!" Balthazar's voice rose up in the air, but Julian felt it more in his mind. Though Balthazar might be muted, it wasn't by much. "You will come to goddamned order!"
Iros?
The fiery-haired woman murmured.
Yeah, the report of the immortals being dead and gone has been vastly overstated,
Julian told her. He didn't wait for her response, nor did he worry about her attacking him. She would be dusted just like the other woman had been if she even so much as looked at him funny. Was this what Damon had been afraid of him seeing? Maybe. He reached down to touch the chains that bound Sophia. He let out a hiss as the metal burned his skin. He shook his hand and breathed on it.
Hold on, Sophia. I'm going to get these off.
He promised her. He turned to the woman with the fiery hair.
Key.
What?
Where's the goddamn key?
He asked her and shoved his hand in her face.
Who has it?
She regarded him with an almost hostile indifference. Use the Iros gift. They've seen you use one. Use another. He heard Damon say.
Give me the key.
Julian said, and he threaded a bit of command in it. Her eyes went hazy, and she reached into a pocket of her robes and withdrew a thin silver key. He snatched it from her hands. Way to go, Julian! That was quite well done, Balthazar called. He and the others were slowly walking down the avenue. The Everdark creatures lined the open space, even as the vampires gazed at the being they had only heard tell of in tales. In his wolf coat, black leather pants, and silk shirt with thigh-high boots, Damon looked like a Gothic king. He moved with a sensual grace, a complete and utter disregard to all the beings surrounding him that would likely do him harm.
Thanks,
Julian said with a nod, as he quickly unlocked the cuffs for Sophia and Camorn. Camorn remained on his knees. Sophia curtsied low and stayed there as Damon had reached the platform. Julian tossed the terrible cuffs away and swung around to face Damon. The fiery-haired woman looked down upon him with utter contempt and hatred. Her lips writhed away from her fangs.
You have come to enslave us. You have come to destroy us. We will not let you filthy immortals rule us ever again.
She shouted.
You've got this all wrong, Vivica.
It was Fiona who spoke. Evidently she knew this woman by name.
King Damon is not our enemy. Even the faith teaches us this. Look at him. Listen to him. Let yourself be open to his words.
You brought him here. How did you do that when the gates were closed?
Vivica snapped.
Because
Fiona opened and closed her mouth. Her gaze sought out certain vampires in the crowd, and Julian wondered if they were Wyvern.
Because I am...
Come on, dear. Say it together with me, Balthazar said as he put an arm around Fiona's shoulders. You are Wyvern. There was a gasp throughout the crowd.
And you are Iros?
Vivica asked. Yes, I am. Balthazar flashed her a smile. Come on, people. You all knew that.
Because you kill vampires without thought?
Vivica sneered. Balthazar gave her a toothy smile. Only the ones that deserve it. You'd probably be on that list, you old zealot.
Confessor Vivica, you must stop this now. Bow to your king. And this now before there is unnecessary violence.
Arceus said.
You are an exile, and there are few here who have even heard of you, Arceus. Your ways are not our ways.
Vivica snapped.
I see that. Where are those who have served the Order faithfully through the millennia?
Arceus asked.
They have been displaced.
Camorn answered, even as he kept his head down.
At Callie's request, they were sent to the far reaches of the Everdark. Most were stripped of power and even some of their immortal lives.
Arceus's brow looked thunderous.
I do not know how you can ever be forgiven, Camorn, regardless of why you have done what you have done.
I accept my role, but it is far beyond me now. It was for some time. None of these people have any allegiance even to me.
Camorn answered, his voice muted by the wood of the platform.
The faith has been renewed. It is a new night for the Order.
Vivica's head raised towards the twin moons, and there was a terrifying zeal in her expression. Julian frowned. This was not good. She almost seemed mad to him. Balthazar frowned, and he felt the powerful vampire lord's mind control magic reach out into the crowd. Whatever he found there, he frowned even more. King Damon, I think we best... He didn't utter any further words. Julian felt his control of them snap. He felt the surge of violence, and then all of the vampires were moving, their mouths open, fangs extended, with utter madness in their eyes. Join us next time for episode 73, Armageddon.
The Night Prince is a little different because I am also recording audio chapters at the same time as I write them. And by the way, I am the one who's reading them, not our wonderful crew at Her Grace Reads. So it's more like Dragon's Reign than it is like Everdark. So members can hear or read the chapters from the start. I'm making this story members only for at least 15 episodes, but we will eventually put it up like Everdark as a public podcast, edited of course, because it has to be Disney safe. You can read the first 5 chapters of The Night Prince right now, but the podcast version is members only. Check out the link and see the beautiful artwork. There's a lot.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reads Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Everdark, Episode 73, Armageddon. Last on Everdark, Julian realizes that Kaemorn's fate is completely in his hands. Remembering a conversation with his mother, Julian realizes that death is not an answer. It should be the last resort. Julian storms ahead with the creatures from the Everdark to stop the mob action. Despite seeing Julian's ability to use many gifts and accepting that Damon is the real thing, the crowd of vampires at the Spire are unimpressed and don't want the immortals ruling them again. Balthazar's fangs were out, but though the desire to kill was high within him, he wanted to protect his fledgling more. He grabbed Christian around the waist and was about to move the young man out of the line of fire when everything stopped. He froze in place. Christian, who had been resisting his attempts to take him to a safe place, both physically and orally, went quiet. Both of them looked around the square. Every vampire on the other side stood like stiff soldiers on parade. Their skin was whiter than normal. They were rigid. They didn't even blink. Their eyes went from showing the savage madness that Vivica had installed in them to confusion, and then to fear. Balthazar knew what this was. Armageddon.
What? But I thought Armageddon was the dusting of that vampire that went to hurt Julian.
Christian whispered back. Neither of them evidently wanted to break this eerie silence. No, I was able to do that before. I had a vision. Anyways, that wasn't it. Oh, it's cool. Balthazar agreed.
So what is this?
Christian asked. Is this Armageddon? Balthazar confirmed with Damon. The vampire king was standing just 2 feet from him, and though he had spoken in half a whisper, Balthazar's voice carried just like he had feared. In this silence, it was as if he had shouted from the rooftops. Yes, Damon answered simply. Then the vampire king's arms rose from his sides, and something, a sheen of red silk, though it couldn't have actually been silk, seemed to rise from each of the enemy vampires. They let out this horrible wail like their very souls were being taken. That red silk drifted towards Damon. He absorbed each and every one of them. His eyes were constantly glowing their hot ember red at the end. Finally, there were no more silks to absorb. His arms lowered. Silence fell again. Balthazar's eyes swept over the crowd. They were different. They were very different. He couldn't quite place what was off about them, but they were lesser than they had been. They were reduced.
What does Armageddon do, Damon?
Christian asked, breaking that silence.
We should not ask the king such things, Christian.
Arceus murmured, his gaze fixed on Damon as if he simply couldn't look away. He was in awe, clearly. Oh, forget that. I want to know too. Damon? Spill. What dastardly thing does Armageddon do? Balthazar cried. What's wrong with them? Something is clearly very wrong with them. Smell them. Damon answered with a faint, almost sad smile on his face. Smell? Balthazar repeated. But then the scent of the nearest enemy vampire reached his nose, and he understood. They didn't smell like vampires anymore. He let out an uncertain sound. Human? Yes. Damon answered. They are all humans again. Mortal, frail, prey.
Oh, by the faith! No wonder it is called Armageddon, for a vampire to be turned mortal again. The horror of it!
Fiona murmured. She looked at the faces of those former vampires. They were no longer rigid. In fact, they were all curling in on themselves, making themselves as small as possible, hunching down, bringing their arms up over their heads to block blows that were not coming. At the moment, there were soft sounds of distress, low moans and urgent wails as the reality struck them. Balthazar let out a sharp, almost shrill laugh. That really is Armageddon. He grinned a rather wolfish grin. What are we going to do with them? That is the question. Damon agreed.
We should let the others through the gate.
Arceus said.
Everyone needs to see this.
Make it so, Damon told him.
As you will it, my king.
After bowing low, the confessor strode through the monsters who simply looked about them, content to wait for Damon's orders. It was a strange sight indeed to see Arceus threading his way past night hags, Wendigo werewolves, and the countless other creatures of the Everdark who moved slightly out of his path. The Everdark had always been a dangerous place for vampires even, but now, would they have to fear these creatures that served Damon? Can you imagine the sheer panic when people realize what you can do, King Damon? Balthazar grinned. From the slight smile on Damon's lips, though why wasn't it larger? And why did he seem so muted? It was clear that the Vampire King had been very aware of the effect this would have on all vampire kind. Balthazar went over to one of the cowering former vampires. It was a man dressed in the black leather robes of a confessor. He grabbed him by the neck and simply lifted him into the air like a kitten. The former vampire let out a gasp and pathetically kicked his feet and scrabbled at Balthazar's wrist. Balthazar twisted him this way and that for Christian to see how helpless he was.
Yes, I can see that he's a frail human now, Balthazar. I remember being one myself not all that long ago.
Christian replied dryly. Christian, too, felt thoughtful. He wasn't feeling the joy of victory that Balthazar expected he should, maybe because it was so very sad. His thoughts were shielded from Balthazar's, and Balthazar did not want to pry to get them out. They're like little stuffed toys or something now. Balthazar set the man down, who immediately curled away from him. Most humans in the presence of vampires run, yell, or throw themselves at you. I suppose it's different because they know we're vampires, and they once were themselves, and, oh, the tumult of thoughts. How they are ruining the day they picked the wrong side. I mean, I could have gotten some vampire pummeling in to make it a really good night, but this will do. He grinned again.
Damon, are you okay?
Julian was leading Sophia by the hand through the cringing crowd. She was fixing her hair and scrubbing some dirt off of her cheek. Camorn stood still in spite of his ripped clothing and bedraggled hair. He still appeared noble, and that was irritating. He suddenly lunged out and grabbed Vivica. He dragged her behind him like a kite with no wind. She stumbled and pulled, trying to break free, but it was utterly impossible. Damon immediately reached for Julian, and the young man came into his arms eagerly as always. Balthazar heard Julian ask,
Hey, what's wrong?
Damon said nothing out loud. And like with Christian, Balthazar would not pry into the Vampire King's private thoughts.
Can we go get my mistress? She's in the dark, and I so want to hug her too.
Sophia cried.
I would be happy to take her to see her.
Camorn offered, as he tossed Vivica at Damon's feet. When she sought to get up, Camorn shoved her down.
Stay?
What do you think, Camorn? Frightened? Armageddon could be your fate too. Balthazar gave him a toothy smile.
Of course.
The Calais vampire tossed his head back.
Who would not be? But I served the king before I knew of his true power. I hope that matters for something.
He looked down at Vivica.
Unlike others who thought they could stand against him.
Damon was still holding on to Julian like his life depended upon it, which was so strange. His own fledgling, though, looked like he understood what was going on. Balthazar felt rather stupid with the whole thing. What's going on, Christian? What am I missing here?
Damon turned vampires back into human beings.
Christian said gently. Yes, quite aware of that. Isn't it wonderful? It's like the absolute worst thing that could happen to them. Balthazar beamed. Christian let out a soft, dry cough.
That's why you're not thinking about it in the way that Damon is. You're not remembering how he was afraid of Julian and I knowing what he was going to do here.
I don't understand. But then he did, and all the joy fell away. This wasn't a victory. It was a disaster. Balthazar whirled around on Damon, who was already looking at him over Julian's shoulder. Why did you do it? Balthazar shouted at his king. Why did you use Armageddon here, in front of our boys? We could have simply ripped them apart. We didn't need you to do this. Damon looked at him with understanding. The Vampire King hadn't wanted to do it, but he had to, because this, of all things, would terrify every vampire out there, just like Fiona had said. The horror of it. But there was more that made Balthazar want to pull his hair out, to scream, to wail even louder than these former vampires were doing. I had to, Damon said. You understand why. Half of it. The other half. You can't want them to leave us. You love Julian. Lies are the fastest way to lose someone. Damon interrupted. You know this. We're going to lose them. You do not know that. Damon whispered. Don't I? You've never been human. You were never turned. They were just turned. Now is the worst time to tell them they can go back, because it is so much easier now to regret it. Balthazar nearly threw his arms up in the air and screamed into the sky. Lying would have been a mistake, Damon reiterated. Why couldn't you just dust them? That would have been plenty impressive. But no, you had to use Armageddon. Balthazar snarled. They haven't drunk from anyone but us. They haven't tasted eternity. They're still so young that they think they're immortal anyways. If they wish this life, neither of us got them because they chose us, Damon. Balthazar moaned. Julian sacrificed himself for Christian. Christian chose to live because he feared for Julian. They did not choose us. So now they know you can undo what was done to them. Damon understood this better than he did. Julian might be the only person in existence, ever, who could survive Damon's blood. If Julian wanted to be human, you will suffer more than me. But you chose for both of us, Balthazar shouted. You should have told me. He turned away from the Vampire King. He felt Damon gently touch his mind. He wanted to turn back and tell his best friend that all was well, but he pushed Damon away. He couldn't lie convincingly right now. Christian hadn't said that it didn't matter if Damon could turn him human, because he wanted to be with Balthazar for eternity anyways. No, Christian hadn't said that. Christian's mind was locked to him, as his fledgling did not want him to know his thoughts. The despair was suddenly crushing him, and all he wanted to do was leave. Why did you do this? He asked Damon again. Because they had to know, Damon responded. Balthazar swallowed glass, or so it seemed. He looked down into Sophia's pleading face. At least one person should be with the mistress they loved so much. I will go with Sophia and came on to get Seer, Balthazar said gruffly.
I wish to go as well,
Christian said, one hand gently on his back. Of course you do. You want to see the Everdark one last time. He did not say this to his fledgling. He merely nodded tightly. We must have faith, Damon murmured. Have you asked Julian what he wants? No, I didn't think so. When you find some faith, perhaps you can lend me some, Balthazar answered without turning around. Iros. No, don't make me feel. I love you, Damon, but I'm so angry with you right now. I can't. I just can't. Balthazar sent and shut his mind down.
We're halfway through Everdark, which will be 147 chapters. Can you believe it? Whether you've just discovered us now or you've been with us since the beginning, I'm so happy to have you listening along to this dramatic vampire tale. The story itself has been finished for a while, and I'm almost done with the sequel, which is I don't know how many chapters from complete, but it's getting close. Right now, it's at 142 chapters and on schedule to finish before 2024 begins. But we'll see. And that sequel's name, by the way, is Everdark Academy. And I hope that you'll be inclined to check it out.
Damon would have to pry it open to reach him right now. Unless there was an emergency, he didn't want to talk. Come on, pet. Let's get your mistress. Came on. Keep ahead of me so I can see you at all times. Balthazar barked.
Of course.
Came on, inclined his head.
But what of Vivica?
He had an eager gleam in his eyes. He wanted payback for being shackled and put on display like that. The very fact that any of these low-life scum had touched him, had even thought to touch him, was too much for Camon. He did not show it on the outside, but his mind was screaming with rage.
Do you really want to be doling out punishment for those that have done evil to an immortal before King Damon sees what you allowed Seer to become?
Sophia asked, with those big eyes fixed on Camon's face. Camon's thoughts and his body froze at once.
I did not cause her to be as she is. I merely...
Continued to torture her.
Sophia filled in for him helpfully. Camon cleared his throat.
Yes, well, I will prove myself useful.
Let's undo some of the harm you've done, shall we? I'm sure King Damon can handle Vivica and everyone here. Balthazar gestured for him to go first. Sophia skipped after him with Balthazar and Christian bringing up the rear. He would have enjoyed seeing how these people who had roared for their blood not moments before were completely cowed. They were hunkered down, arms over their heads mewling. He wanted to kick a few of them for good measure, but Christian wouldn't like that. Christian was looking all around them, his eyes mostly going to the sky above their heads with the twin moons and the red beam of light that soared into the sky. His eyes were wide with wonder. He didn't seem to notice or care about their enemies at all. That doesn't mean he isn't thinking about turning human, Balthazar realized. If his parents were to learn there is a way back, it will be completely over. All those times I said that there was no way back, Damon never said, "Actually, Iros, I could turn them human right now." But he knew why Damon hadn't spoken. He hadn't wanted Julian to go. He had lied because he knew there was a real risk Julian could choose humanity then. But once they were here, Damon must have realized that he had to use Armageddon, and that would open up Pandora's box. Maybe he foresaw something. Speaking of foreseeing, why wasn't Sophia chirruping something good to him, like, "Oh, Balthazar, once I get my kitties, you and Christian will be so happy to have them in your forever home." She should have been saying something like that, but she wasn't. She was skipping with rather dogged determination to get into the spire. Her mind was completely on Seer, not him. She was another one who would leave him. They passed by the bonfires that were to have given both her and Camon their second deaths. She ignored them, while Camon scowled at them as if they were a personal affront. They rather were. Just as they were entering the huge, double-arched doors of the spire, Balthazar saw that Arceus had managed to open the gate, and the Cully vampires and his own house were coming through. But it wasn't just their allies and his own house that emerged into view. Balthazar had a momentary shock as he realized his call to the other Iros had been answered. They were simply pouring into the square. When they caught sight of all the Order members, their expressions changed from shock to confusion to amusement and then to hunger. So many sweet humans for them to feed from, so many old scores to settle, so many prey to chase. Though Balthazar was still angry with Damon, and he knew the Vampire King could do this himself, his own pride and friendship for the other immortal had him sending a command through all their minds. "These are the prey of the king. Do not touch unless he gives you permission to. Do not shame yourselves or me." Heads snapped towards him. He felt dozens, no, hundreds of minds reaching out to him. He embraced them back, but turned them to Arceus, giving the Confessor the ability to touch the minds too. He hadn't realized he could quite do that until now. "I have a task. I will return. Let Arceus explain all that has occurred." he sent to them. Arceus, he sent to his friend. Deal with them. Don't let them do anything stupid.
I will assure they are kept in line. Gently.
The confessor answered with a large smile that not even his bushy beard could hide. Go to Arceus. All is well. Balthazar sent once more to all the eager Eiros minds, and he could sense that there were even more beyond these that wanted to be with him. They were awed, almost tear-filled thoughts in response. Those who had once called him exile with disdain were the most moved. They worried he would hate them, and that they wouldn't be favored. How could they be, when they had mocked him? But he had always known that those who did not see that he had done a good thing by giving Rome tithe his second death were fools. Now they would see the error of their ways.
They're practically worshipping you.
Christian said with an amused grin. There's no practically about it. I will make it real, he said, a shadow of his old humor showing. They'd get down on their knees before me if they thought it would get them in my good graces. How can I laugh and joke when I know that you are simply waiting to break the truth to me, that you want to become human and leave my life, Christian? But while he thought this, he didn't send it.
Are we going inside, or do you wish to bask?
Caemon asked dryly. Considering no one even likes you, Caemon, I'm sure you can't comprehend being loved, Balthazar retorted.
They just want your favor, you know. They just want to make sure that they aren't on the outside looking in like you were.
Caemon snapped. I was never on the outside. King Damon made that clear to me. I have been, and always will be, the immortal Eiros, the king's confidant and best friend, Balthazar said. Caemon looked at him through those almost white-blonde lashes. Balthazar expected a lame comeback, or, if he were honest with himself, a witty, cutting one, as were Caemon's wont. But the Kali vampire merely inclined his head again and led them into the spire.
That response was interesting,
Christian murmured.
What do you suppose he's up to?
Trying to gain favor with Damon, of course. Probably has some idea that he could be chosen as the head of all Calais. Balthazar answered. His heart quivered every time that Christian spoke. He kept thinking that this might be one of the last times they would speak like this, confidentially, about vampire politics. If things were different, he would have been so proud of Christian for pointing that out.
He won't get that, though, will he?
Christian's eyes were wide. I am not certain, Balthazar admitted. He has helped us. He came to King Damon. He didn't have to be brought. He was misled by Cully. It would look poorly upon Damon to punish him.
But he killed Julian's parents.
Christian's silver eyes blazed. That is why I'm not certain. If Caemon had done everything else but that, I think he would be given exactly what he wants. But he killed them and hurt Julian. And that is something that cannot be forgiven. Balthazar pressed his lips together and thought to himself, but did not share with Christian. And if Julian leaves Damon, I am pretty sure Damon will rip Caemon apart, cell by cell. Caemon took them down the long central stairway of the spire to a surprisingly small, almost inconspicuous door at the far end. He cut his thumb and pressed it against a nearly imperceptible groove. There was a soft click, and the door opened on its own, showing them a narrow, curving stone staircase. The smell of wet stone and old meat wafted up to Balthazar. His nose wrinkled. Christian crowded against him. Sophia gave out a cry and pushed past Caemon to hurry down the dark staircase.
Mistress! It's Sophia! I'm here!
The little girl vampire cried, and to Balthazar's shock, as he didn't want to imagine anyone down here, especially a fellow immortal, he heard a call back.
Sophia, my darling, I knew it would be you. Let Caemon down first, dearest. He will release the locks and traps.
They found Sophia standing midway down the winding staircase, tapping her foot impatiently. Her sweetness dropped away as she saw Caemon, and she wrenched him down the stairs. He nearly lost his footing. He looked back at her in shock.
Release her!
Sophia hissed.
Now!
She no longer looked pretty and petite. She no longer seemed sweet and innocent. What they all saw was a very ancient vampire who was enraged. Caemon took a few steps away from her. Luckily, he moved down the stairs, or otherwise Balthazar was pretty sure she would have ripped Camon's throat out.
Move quickly.
Christian urged Camon. The Kali vampire did just that. He hustled down the stairs. There were light crystals intermittently stuck into the wall to give light, but it was a dim, grim dungeon. When they reached the bottom, the reeking scent of old meat was everywhere, and then he saw the line of bars and the figure that came shambling towards them.
She has no eyes,
Christian croaked.
Do not be afraid, dear Christian. I know I am hideous right now, but I'm not a monster.
The figure answered him. Her voice was musical, and through the grime and horror of her face, Balthazar knew she had once been quite beautiful.
I will be again, Eros. You will compliment my beauty, tease me endlessly. You're flirting. How I miss it. You are ever such a flirt, even though your heart is taken now.
Sia said with an almost girlish laugh. Balthazar stepped towards the bars and reached through them to her. Forgive me, Sia, that I did not know you were here, that I did not come to your aid.
You did not know who you truly were until a few days ago. How could you remember me? We were all supposed to be dead. Truly dead,
she said, clasping his hands in her bony, grimy ones. A shudder went through her. You're starving.
Yes, I am afraid so. I can scent the blood. So many humans. He used Armageddon, yes?
Her voice was taut, and her fangs came down. Camon, unlock that door, and then get her some of the humans to feed from. Now! Balthazar snapped.
Yes, yes.
Camon murmured, and the lock to the cell fell open. He immediately darted towards the stairs and was racing up them. He was not a fool. He had kept her in there.
Mistress!
Sophia opened the door for her and immediately got on her knees, groveling.
I took too long.
Even without eyes, Sia found the small vampire girl and embraced her.
No, Sophia. You came exactly in time.
Sia rocked Sophia as the vampire girl sobbed tears of joy and grief.
We should get Seer out of this place,
Christian said.
No, dear Christian, until I am fed enough not to fly into an insane frenzy, I must stay down here.
Sia said.
How do you know my name?
Christian asked her.
How could I not know the name of the best friend of the king's fledgling, let alone Eros's beloved?
She asked. Balthazar stiffened, and a tidal wave of despair went through him. It was so great that he could not stop himself from saying, He's not. He's just learned. Damon used Armageddon, and now we both know that he can become human again, and...
Why would I want to become human again?
Christian's eyebrows were drawn together. Why? Why? Why indeed? You mean you don't? I thought you... Balthazar ran out of words as he felt his fledgling's mind open to him.
Oh, Balthazar, you thought... No. I was just worried about how I was going to explain to Mom and Dad that even though there is a way back, that I don't want it.
Christian began, but he got no farther, for Balthazar was kissing him. Join us next time for episode 74, Questions You Will Not Ask.
If Everdark Academy is almost done being written, is that the end of the Everdark universe? No. In fact, I'm planning the third Everdark story now. Like Everdark and Everdark Academy, the story will focus on different main characters, including a fan favorite who's getting his own love interest, but will also have the same characters from Everdark and Everdark Academy that you've grown to love. It will also introduce some new characters that I also hope you come to love too. And this book not only has huge arcs and huge things that are going to happen, but it sets up a fourth Everdark story. I think it's safe to say that as long as people want more Everdark, I want to write it. If you want to read the nearly complete sequel, Everdark Academy, the only way is to join my serial website, wraithrain.com, where Everdark Academy is being posted right now. The link to the sign-up form is in the notes.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thelis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.